Right, what ones are still left?
Oh, sorry, Rob.
9, 10, still left.
8, 9, 11, 13 and 14.
It won't get to you either, Robin, so don't stress.
8.
8, 9,
Nine.
11, 13 and 14.
Eight, as a war manager.
Okay.
All right, Joe.
Joe's already taken number 1. And we don't have to take them in order, we can take them according to the
I'm
members
sure you have
of
to get in there.
Yes, yes.
So,
We can't take them that, so if Michelle's staying in and nobody else, we'll go straight to your question today. Saves you asking then the next day.
You don't need to put yourself out.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Declare the meeting open into the public. Agenda item number 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies? Okay, no apologies. Chairperson's business. Can I advise members that as we are approaching Easter recess, it would be useful if you could switch on your tablets periodically to enable any updates to take place over this Easter period. This will ensure that there will be no delays the next time you have to use your tablet. The Deputy Chairperson and I met with Mr Drum of Sainsbury's regarding the letter sent to the supermarkets on the issue of penalties being applied by NIMEA to those cattle which do not meet the Inspect Quality Assurance standards. Mr Drum did indicate that Sainsbury's has had the same standards for the last 10 years and that nothing new had been added or anything changed. Their standard is that the cow must have been at its last residency for 20 days. In his opinion, the reason for this is that NIMEA is reflecting a change in supply and demand by paying less for cattle that are not in spec. Mr Drum outlined how they prefer to work through the processors with farmer groups and how their beef, chicken and pork are currently from the UK or Ireland. The Inspect Quality Assurance standard applies to all quality of beef, be it the Taste the Difference range, Sainsbury's or basic brands. He also indicated that local produce is what all their surveys indicate that their customers want. Provenance and traceability is very important to Sainsbury's. We also discussed new requirements regarding labelling to show where an animal was born, reared and slaughtered. Mr Drum promised to follow up the meeting with a letter and to cover whether the Inspect standards apply to processed beef items such as burgers, meatballs, etc. also. So it was a very, very useful meeting. Can I just say that we've written to all the supermarket groups. Sainsbury's were the one back and offered a meeting in person. They've done that to date, so I would commend them for that, to actually come and see the whites of our eyes. Deputy Chairperson was there also. Joanne, you want to add?
No, I found it very worthwhile and he was open and fairly transparent, which I thought was welcome.
Members, any questions or queries on it? Okay, he has obviously still the commitment to write back to the committee officially, as have all the supermarkets. So we'll wait to see what he officially writes back with. Can I advise members that an informal meeting with the Fishermen's Forum has been arranged for Monday the 20th of April at 12:30 p.m. in room 29. The Deputy Chairperson and I will be attending, but should any other member wish to attend, can they please advise the clerk. The clerk will send out a text and email to remind members of the informal meeting near the time. Okay, members. Also, myself and Joanne attended the farmers' meeting in Greenmount last night. It was very well attended. In fact, I reckon there was about 100, maybe more, people outside the hall who could not get in, and the people who were in the hall, it was absolutely packed with people. Norman Fulton made a presentation, as did Wesley Aston of the Ulster Farmers Union, and then there was a question and answer session. I didn't get to hear it all because I actually struggled to get into the hall at first. But there was a great range of questions from a great range of people there. All farming types and landowners were there. Very, very useful to hear the views of the farming community. I did manage to ask a question of Norman, and I asked him when the Minister was going to take her proposals to the Executive. Norman Fulton's answer was that they would still have it for a few weeks and then they would give their advice and proposals to the Minister. It would then be up to the Minister to decide when she would take that forward to the Executive. So obviously I applied pressure that that needs to be done as quickly as possible. In fact, it maybe should have already been done, in my opinion. Joanne?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think to say last night was overcrowded was an understatement. Certainly there's a lot of fear and anxiety because of the entrances to the hall being blocked. It certainly was quite scary at one point in the crush, and to see farmers outside standing on summer seats craning at the windows to hear what was going on, I just think we certainly need a much larger venue, and the fact that they came from masses from all across Northern Ireland shows the very real fear and concerns there is among farmers. I think there certainly does need to be greater clarity for farmers to exactly what's happening, because until decisions are taken, that fear and certainly that uncertainty was very evident last night. One farmer I was chatting to from Tandragee said to me, outside the hall I couldn't, I maybe wasn't as pushy as you, I couldn't get into the hall. I conducted a lot of conversations out in the hallway because I couldn't get into the main hall. One farmer from outside Tandragee said to me that if farming goes to the wall, Northern Ireland goes to the wall with it. And that's certainly the fear that there is out there. I think the focus really needs to stay on helping those farmers who are actively contributing to the industry and best placed to grow the future. And certainly what I was hearing out in the hallway was a longer transition period, but there is so much fear, so much uncertainty out there, and it was actually quite scary at times, as you know, the crush that there was to get in to hear what was going on. So I think that certainly the echoes of which taken back. My husband, I think he managed to squeeze in. He was maybe pushy like you as well. He was there to the very end, and he was home fairly late from it. But we need to, we'd be doing the farmers a disservice if we didn't try and get clarity for them as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Sorry, can I declare an interest? My husband's a beef and cereal farmer who receives single farm payment.
Keep it right, Joanne.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I wasn't able to attend that meeting last night, but the same farmer that was speaking to Joanne rang me this morning, so I had a long chat with him. Absolutely, I think we all want to see clarity as soon as possible on the way forward, and it's vital that the right decision is made for the farmers. Been a farmer myself, I suppose. Have to declare an interest too, so hopefully decisions can be made as soon as possible and give some clarity.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments?
Well, Chairman, again, like others, I think the sooner the definitive determination is made, the better, because I think there's a degree of frustration out there, and it's becoming fairly manifest, and that's the concerning issue regarding the sort of sense of relationships that is among different groups of farmers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, moving on then. Agenda item number 3, minutes of the meeting on the 1st of April. Can I refer members to draft minutes of the meeting at pages 6 to 11. Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate? If so, I will sign. Agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed, yeah.
Brilliant. Agenda item number 4 then is matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at page 14 to 24 and the suggested index sheet at pages 13? Are members content to go with the suggested action? Does any member want to raise a specific issue?
The only comment I make, Chairman, is there's more and more individuals writing to us about their frustration about single farm payment, and those that have felt that they didn't qualify or they were disqualified in the last situation. I would hope that DARD this time would give an opportunity to those that feel a sense of grievance that they have not enjoyed a single farm payment because of whatever way they ran the business or didn't properly make application in the past. I certainly am aware of some individuals who feel that this may be an opportunity now for them to re-enter the situation.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments out of the suggested actions, members? Or members content to note? Okay. Okay, agenda item number 5, update on TB eradication or briefing. Can Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 26 to 41 and the paper from the department at pages 41 to 58. The Hansard of the meeting on the 15th of October 2013 has also been included at pages 60 to 76. Before we commence the briefing, can I advise members that I have been advised by the department that the proposals for the next stage of the TVR exercise has not yet been cleared by the executive. Just with regards to that news, just before I officially welcome anyone, Kate, is there anything that you want to add with regards to that news, that the TVR exercise has not been cleared by the executive?
No, Chair, there's not, and unfortunately it does limit what we can actually discuss with you today on TVR, but we will be very happy once we get executive clearance to come back and to update the committee at your request.
Okay, thank you. Well then, can I officially welcome Kate Davey, Principal Officer, Colin Hart, Deputy Chief Veterinary Officer, Rolly Harwood, Senior Principal Veterinary Officer, Andrew Kell, Principal Officer, and Ian McKee, Principal Officer. You're very welcome to the committee as always. Can I ask you to take no more than 10 minutes to address the committee on any additional points that are not contained in your briefing papers? I understand some papers of the TVR exercise that were to be cleared by the executive yesterday were not considered, and that you are therefore restricted in what you can say regarding this aspect. So could you, we'll leave that there if you like. No doubt there will still be questions that will come out and you may find difficult to answer. We'll just have to try our best in that regard.
Fine, happy to work with you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, without further ado, Kate, are you going to lead off for us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to provide the committee with an update on bovine TB and on the test, vaccinate and remove, but that will be very limited, what we can say on that, better known as TVR. I have with me today, and I think probably everyone knows the people, Colin Hart, our Deputy Chief Veterinary Officer, Rolly Harwood, our Senior Principal Veterinary Officer, Ian McKee to my left, from the Head of TB Policy Branch, and Andrew Kell, Head of TB Research Branch. I'm pleased to report there's been an improvement in TB position in 2013 when compared with 2012. TB herd incidents have fallen from 7.32% for the year ending the 31st of December 2012 to 6.44% for the year ending the 31st of December 2013. The TB herd incident at the end of February this year was down again to 6.34%. While there has been a 12.7% reduction in the number of new herd breakdowns during 2013 when compared with 2012, there has been an even greater 24.1% reduction in the number of animals removed as reactors in the same period. During 2013, there were 1,479 new herd breakdowns and 8,271 animals removed as reactors, compared to 1,695 new herd breakdowns and 10,897 reactors in 2012. So on that front, we're moving in the right direction. However, we welcome this reduction in TB, but we feel there's no room for complacency, and we need to further reduce our levels of TB in our herds with the ultimate aim of obviously eradication. Moving on to the strategic partnership, you will recall that the Minister announced last September that she intended to establish a TB strategic partnership group to develop a long-term strategy to eradicate TB from the cattle population here. The Minister indicated that the eradication strategy should be all-embracing and address all relevant issues, and the partnership should also produce an action plan to implement that strategy. The action plan should outline the cost of implementing the various elements and detail how these elements will be funded and who will lead on their implementation. So it's very much a shared approach here. It is, however, unfortunate that we haven't been able yet to establish that partnership, but I can actually advise the committee that work is progressing exceptionally well on this. To have the strategic partnership to be effective, we have to recruit both the chair and the members to this group, and I'm pleased to tell you that we're about to advertise for these posts now. It's anticipated the chair will be appointed first and will then be part of a panel to recruit 4 or 5 individual members. Appointment of the chair is expected to take place in May. Once established, the partnership group will be tasked, as the Minister said, with developing a long-term strategy and implementation plan within 12 months of its establishment. Moving on to research. Turning to the recent TB research findings, you're aware that the TB biosecurity report was published last November, and the committee received a copy of that. This report revealed the need for training to be provided for farmers on biosecurity in general, and more specifically in relation to TB. For example, more could be done to prevent inclusions of wildlife into cattle housing and feed stores. We have already met stakeholders once to assess what can be done to raise biosecurity awareness. We're also considering what TB biosecurity training and capital funding could be made available for on-farm biosecurity improvement measures in the context of the next Rural Development Programme. The recently completed slurry literature review provides a comprehensive review of national and international scientific papers and conference proceedings on the role of that slurry might have in the transmission of bovine TB to cattle and wildlife. The final report was published in February this year, and this report has already been provided to yourselves and to key industry stakeholders and is available now on the DARD website. The review confirmed that M. bovis is capable of surviving in the environment for extended periods of time, and environmental contamination may be important in the indirect transmission of TB between cattle and wildlife. The survival of M. bovis is artificially infected slurry indicates that the organism may survive up to 6 months in stored slurry. This is why it is recommended that slurry should be stored for a minimum of 6 months before being spread on the land. The report also recommends ways of spreading slurry to minimise aerosol spray, and that should be adopted. Officials are now considering this report in more detail, and given the association between disease risk and the use of farm contractors highlighted in the TB biosecurity report, what further advice can be provided to minimise even further the risk of transmission from this source? So that's under consideration. Ongoing TB research projects are also continuing in connection with the gammon interferon testing, and we anticipate receipt from AFBI of the badger cattle proximity study in the very near future. This report, of course, will be shared with the committee once it's available. In the coming weeks, we plan to hold a stakeholder event to see how the messages from these research projects that have now been published, such as the biosecurity and the slurry literature review, can be actually effectively disseminated to farmers, that message. And we want to discuss this with the industry really to see how best to take this message forward and to ensure that as much as possible of that message ends up implemented. Turning briefly to TBR, and I'll just highlight where we are on that till we sent the paper to the Minister sent the paper. Turning to TBR, substantial work has been undertaken to progress the TBR research project. At the outset, the Minister made it clear that it was vital that Northern Ireland embarked on an intervention research project that could provide a unique contribution or insight to TB and wildlife here, and that we must avoid simply replicating expensive interventions or research being taken forward elsewhere. You can appreciate that the design was complex, and several key steps had to be carried out to inform that design. One such step was the badger set survey in 200-kilometre areas in County Down to establish the location and number of badger sets. This work is completed, or has been completed. Landowners' agreement to allow surveying to take place was excellent and led to over 80% of each of the areas being surveyed, so that far exceeded our 70% target. In addition, external modelling work, as we've said before, was undertaken by FAIRA. That's now basically changed their name to the National Wildlife Management Centre. To help us, we've used this to help us identify the most appropriate area for the study, the optimum size and the frequency and duration of the intervention. Modelling outputs have helped our veterinary epidemiologists design a TV mandate that is best able to provide an evidence base taking account of our budgetary constraints. Now, I'm sure the committee is aware that the TVR project is cross-cutting. You've already acknowledged that. It's cross-cutting from the point of view that it's cross-cutting with DFP from a finance point of view. It's cross-cutting with DOE from the point of view of their responsibility for protection of wildlife. And it's also cross-cutting with DHSS, who have responsibility for licensing under the Animal Scientific Act procedure. Therefore, in compliance with the Ministerial Code, executive agreement is required to allow TVR to go ahead. The Minister has put a proposal on TVR to the executive, and following the executive's decision, as I said, officials will be happy to update this committee again at your request. Now, I hope, Mr. Chairman, that has been helpful, and we're very happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate, for your presentation. I'll start off with the questions, and with all due respect, we've heard a presentation there which lasted 10 minutes and would have taken a lot of time to prepare. But really, all I heard was phrases like ongoing work, very near future, engaging with other ministers, going to the executive, nothing back yet. I haven't heard anything concrete. I haven't heard anything of real significant substance. Nothing targeted, nothing strategic. We're told that we're still researching. We've seen no action on the ground. We have a group that was to be set up, a strategic partnership. The last time you were here, we questioned the need for such a group. We are now told that it has been delayed. It was to be in place by the end of 2013, with the strategy produced within 12 months of its establishment. There have been slippage due to competing TVR priorities. There have been lack of progress in most of the research, if not all of the research, that was to be commissioned because of vacancies and gaps within AFBI and others. So, can I ask, what are the competing TVR priorities? Should this not all be a massive priority for the department? And why is it not? Because looking from here, it's as if nothing really has changed since the last time you were all here before us. It's feeling a bit like Groundhog Day, and we have seen nothing move forward. In fact, we're just given excuses as to why things haven't moved forward.
Well, Mr. I'm disappointed that that's actually what you came to in conclusion, because actually I can assure you there has been substantial work undertaken on TB and on TVR and on the research projects. The department does actually see TB as a very high priority. We have actually a substantial team working on it. We are delivering on an ongoing daily basis our TB programme. That is a very comprehensive piece of work that continues to be delivered, and the results that I've indicated to you show that actually it is working. We're testing. Results are on the ground there. We are delivering actually in terms of TVR. It does take time actually to take this to design this project, and there is basically so many steps, and I do appreciate that you find it frustrating, but we are at a crucial stage. We're now waiting actually to get something through the executive with a view to actually, and I can't preempt the executive's decision obviously on this, but we're hoping that that comes very, very soon. And we've done an awful lot of preparation, and it's unfortunate that we can't tell you about that today, but the groundwork has been done on TVR. We're now waiting on the decision. So that's where we're sitting. There has been a lot of work actually and good output in terms of actually our research projects. We have actually, as I said, brought to fruition actually the biosecurity report, the slurry review. We're about to get the proximity report. We've had numerous meetings with our stakeholders, we're looking at again meet our stakeholders actually to really look at how we're disseminating that message. We want to put it out there effectively. We've been liaising with other colleagues across the department in terms of actually ensuring that the next the Rural Development Programme actually has measures in it that will actually help our farmers address TB, whether that be training or actually capital measures. We're hoping to actually get capital measures in there so that we can actually allow farmers and support farmers to actually implement the recommendations from the biosecurity report. Things like badger proofing actually their farmyards, fencing off actually sets, those type of actions where they actually need money to do that, and we're hoping to get that built in. So there is actually a push on TB, and I certainly would not want the committee to think that it's not a priority for the department. It is a major priority for the department.
Just by way of supplementary, our committee recommendation 4, 6 and 7 is all around awareness of the potential impact of liver fluke and Jones disease to sensitivity of the testing of bovine TB. We're told that study was commissioned on the 23rd of April 2013 but is yet to start owing to vacancies in key posts. Recommendation number 6, methods available to improve the performance and reduce the cost of the gamma interferon test. We're told that that was scheduled to be completed by December 13. Slippage is due to vacancies in key posts. Recommendation 7, to explore how a comprehensive and detailed information currently available on strains can be better interrogated and used in the programme to eradicate bovine TB. We are told that progress has been delayed due to staff vacancies, but anticipated that the initial proposal will be considered by DARD in the near future. Now, the last time you were here, you told us this was a highly complicated disease, all sorts of strains going all sorts of places, and before we could really do any action on the ground, we have to understand the disease. But yet we've been told that everything has been delayed because of vacancies. Or maybe this is the same person that's vacant, or maybe these are different vacancies. But somewhere along the line, things will have to start maturing and actually coming before the Minister and the like of you people to actually assess it. And until we do that, until we understand this disease, how can we ever do anything on the ground and know it's going to be a success?
I fully accept that we have to understand the disease, and certainly we are working with AFBI in terms of actually supporting them to try and fill the vacancies, and where possible our veterinary service is also trying to do some of the elements of the work. So things may be looking bleaker than what they are, but I can assure you that we continue to work to try and get those key posts actually filled to progress the disease. We're also looking to other areas who are taking research forward so that we can actually build our knowledge. It may not be our knowledge directly on the situation in Northern Ireland, but it is wider. So, the work is ongoing on that. I don't know if anyone wants to come in to support that, but it is a priority for us. It is sometimes very difficult in a smaller organisation to get key people and to keep those key people, unfortunately, in post. And that's the difficulty sometimes. But it's not something that we aren't working to try and address.
If you tell us and you're trying to ensure us that work is ongoing and we're going at a rate of knots, and it's unfortunate people are not in place, why then do we need strategic partnership? Because it says here that the partnership will address all issues, including how the strategy will be funded, who will lead on the implementation of the various elements of the strategy, improve disease detection, improve biosecurity, improving communications with farmers and vets, and developing our ability to address the wildlife factor. Now, is that not what's going on? Because if it is, why do we need another partnership when we have already partnerships in place that have got you to this point where they have agreed to the TVR?
We certainly have a lot of groups working to bring things together, but certainly, as the Minister explained when she came here in September, we've seen this as really a closer working relationship with industry and more of an ownership. We have obviously our annual eradication plan, but we want a long-term strategy, and the department don't actually want to say, this is the strategy and here industry, this is what we're going to do. It's about actually giving the industry a very clear seat at the table and saying, right, let's sit down and develop this long-term strategy, because we're not going to eradicate this disease in 5 years' time. Like, if you look at actually the strategy that has just been published in England, they're talking about eradication in 2038. You know, so we are talking about a long-term strategy here. It's about jointly owning that strategy, because this is going to take money. We all actually have to work together. We're all going, and I mean by all, the department, the industry, the players here are all going to have to do their share to move this forward. Farmers will have to play a part in this as well. So it's about actually really reinvigorating the work that we're doing and driving us towards that ultimate long-term strategy goal.
How will this strategy, how will this partnership be able to come to an accommodation as how the strategy itself will be funded? How will that work?
Well, they're going to have to, like, what we want actually here is key people from the industry around the table, people who will actually have the respect of the industry right through from the processing industry right through to farmers. But it's about us working together and sitting down and actually looking at what the key elements of this strategy will be and who is best placed to actually deliver that and who actually can fund it. Like, well, the department has TB as a priority. We don't have an unlimited budget for TB. We have a budget at the moment. If we put the total cost of TB into context, it costs us about 30 million a year. So we're going to have to look at how that money is currently spent. Does our industry partnership feel that that money is best spent the way it is? Should actually, we'll have to address everything, whether that be compensation, everything, but this is about going forward jointly on a united front. You know, is our money better put into 100% compensation? Is our money better put into 80% compensation? And sorry, these are just figures off the top of my head. And basically taking the rest of the money to do some other actions. So it's about looking at the money that's currently available, looking for new money, and that new money doesn't have to be government money, to try and actually tackle this disease once and for all and have a long-term plan to do it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put out the members. John Dobson.
Thank you, Chair. Kate, thank you for your briefing. I certainly welcome the reduction in herd incidents and resultant compensation reduction. However, as you say, there's no room for complacency, and this is no guarantee of future performance. Our 13th recommendation suggested that DARD reinvigorate biosecurity training and advice, and in your response you have said that TB biosecurity leaflets are available on the DARD website. Is this your the leaflet, your definition of reinvigorate? Because it's certainly not what the members of the committee, I'm sure, had in mind. And given the huge implications for the industry and the taxpayer, would DARD not consider a more robust approach than putting leaflets on a website? Our recommendation, the committee recommendation, went on to say that advice and training should be delivered, and I quote, at a pace and a setting that best suits the farmer and herd keeper. So you've had many months, and I share the concerns of the Chair, you've had many months to plan and reinvigorate your approach. What more could you have done other than a leaflet on a website?
It's not just a leaflet on a website. You know, we have actually been delivering training. There is messages been given out there. For example, there was specific BVD training to farmers, and that actually delivered a biosecurity message as well and tailored it around TB. So that message has been delivered. It's about actually promotion as well. We've had numerous promotion events in terms of the likes of the Winter Fair. So it's about promoting that. The plan, as I said during my opening remarks, was actually to continue to do that and to put clear training in place and to secure money through the next Rural Development Programme to allow that training to be tailored to the farmers' needs and delivered, and to get funding to actually do that. So work is ongoing and is underway and will continue. Like, for example, when we go to Balmoral Show, which obviously all of the farmers or the vast majority attend, we will have the dart stand, we'll have TB on the stand. We will be trying to deliver that message very clearly as well. There's also a message, and I'll allow some of our veterinary colleagues to come in here as well, a message delivered directly to the individual farmers every time there is actually a breakdown and there's assistance and help given there. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, maybe just start off with the leaflet. Now, it is only a leaflet, but it was developed with all the farming organisations. So we were all around the table identifying the key issues for that would protect the herds. So it was done, with involvement of the industry, and I think this is a theme which we need to keep coming back to: is how to better engender the farmers and to make them realise that there's so much that they can do to protect their herds, to keep disease out, and the farmer is absolutely central to the whole message of biosecurity. So we do need, and I fully accept the point, that we need to get this message across. With 3,000 farmers, 3,000 and several hundred farmers attended the BVD training, and the interesting thing, of course, is that many of there's a commonality between animal diseases. What will keep one animal disease out will keep a number of animal diseases out. So the BVD training is very key, and as the BVD programme is encouraged and as it rolls out, to protect the herd against BVD from reinfection will actually help to protect it against TB. So veterinary service, my staff, if you like, obviously we give specialist biosecurity advice to farmers who have had breakdowns. But over and above that, we do try to promote the message that's on our website and has been for some years. The principles haven't changed, they're all there. But what the TB biosecurity study has highlighted is that farmers are quite often aware of what is required from biosecurity, but they don't always see the need to implement those measures. And that's something I think that we've got to encourage. We've got to somehow find a mechanism to get farmers to engage in biosecurity, not necessarily to understand it better, but to practice it better. And I think those are some of the points that, and perhaps finish by saying biosecurity also, I think, and we recognise this increasingly, needs to reflect the role of the badger. So when I say this, people would regularly say to me, but there's nothing we can do. But in fact, we strongly believe there is. There are things that can be done, including the fencing off of badger sets on pasture and the securing of housing to prevent badgers entering those houses, for example, to steal cattle foodstuffs. Those are, I think, are increasingly recognised as key measures in the prevention of TB. So there's still quite a long way to go on this, but we are actively involving private vets. We are trying to promote our message with farmers and all the public fora that are available, and we do consider biosecurity to be an absolutely fundamental part of TB eradication.
I think what I would add to that too is that we're trying to actually educate our future farmers, and it's basically as part of actually CAFRE's programme as well, to put that message out very strongly now to students in terms of actually the importance of biosecurity. So, it's the next generation is going to be hearing that as well now.
I suppose I should declare that my husband is one of those farmers that you need to engage with. I'm heartened then by your reassurance that it's more. It was very concerning in your response to read that a biosecurity leaflet was available on the website. It was quite shocking to read that. Can I do my supplementary,
yes,
Chair? The Chair has already touched on my supplementary. Recommendation 4, research into the liver fluke and Jones disease. And again, the APFI, it concerned me to read of the APFI have been delayed due to the vacancies in the post, and I know, Kate, you've touched on that, explain the rationale behind the vacancies. But as the Chair said earlier, we have been here before. The biosecurity report was held back for the very same reason, the vacancies. Are the department not concerned about these delays? What are you doing about the delays? In this case, if I'm right in saying it was a 1-year delay, what is then therefore your best guess as to when the 30-month study will finally begin? And finally, has the cost of the study been agreed with APFI? And are you considering revisiting this as a result of this delay?
I think maybe just briefly in relation to the vacancies, and AFBI have been seeking to fill key vacancies. I think it's fair to say that they lost a number of key staff, and BVD and Johne's disease have been up there as being very important in the last couple of years. And the people who would have been dealing with strain typing, etc., and some of the liver fluke and other diseases have gone to BVD and Johne's disease, which is crucial and will have a benefit, but it has created a vacancy or vacancies that have to be filled. There is a small pool of people that have been putting out adverts, but they have not got people in post, so there has been duplication there. Perhaps someone is stepping in to try to hold things, but until someone else comes in to help them. And also we've had epidemiologists have been diverted onto the TVR project, which has been a major piece of work over the last 12 months and more.
When do you think it will begin?
I haven't a date at this stage, but we will certainly come back to the committee. We will discuss the issue again with AFBI and come back with a date that they anticipate filling this post.
And therefore, because the vacancy hasn't been filled, even no costings or anything?
There would be costings, and we can also provide those. We don't have them to hand today, but those would all have been already agreed with AFBI.
But you will provide those?
Yes.
Here. Thank you.
Yeah, just on Joanne's point, because it is very good, a very strong point, and that's around what Ian has said about people moving to other departments because of priorities and everything else. But if the priority was liver fluke and Johne's disease, that is part of the network of research that needs to be done and how that affects bovine TB. So surely if someone was moving sideways in AFBI or anywhere else, surely they could have conducted a piece of work and survey on liver fluke and Johne's disease when they're doing that anyway, and how it interacts and affects bovine TB.
Sorry,
Well,
maybe
they've moved out from AFBI.
Sorry, they've moved to the private sector. Sorry, we should have clarified that for you. They didn't move within AFBI.
Right.
They moved to the private sector to take forward BVD and Johne's. So what the industry is doing, unfortunately, has actually had a knock-on effect on ourselves.
Right, okay. And then another point that Joanne has raised is the biosecurity research, which was delayed, and it was then presented to us finally in November 2013. Can I ask what has been done with that piece of research since? It's 5 months ago. So how has that been uploaded into the system?
I'm happy to take that one. As far as we, as officials in DARD are concerned, both in relation to administrative policy people, scientists and vets, we have had quite a number of meetings to review what our existing biosecurity advice is, to sharpen that and to see ways in which we can promote that. We've touched on some of those issues already. We're also having got the slurry literature review, because there are some things, there's a commonality in some aspects, that we want to take the main points, both of the TB biosecurity study and also of the literature review, and a number of other developments, not necessarily within Northern Ireland but elsewhere in these islands, to bring them to the industry. And we're planning a stakeholder workshop day to look at that, because we can do so much, but we do need the advice of the industry how best to get the message across. Some of the things that have been identified in the biosecurity study might be causal, but it might just be an association. For instance, it seemed that people that had a breakdown had more reliance upon agricultural contractors than people who didn't have a breakdown. Now, what we're not saying is, and we shouldn't from this meeting say, that agricultural contractors cause TB. That's not the issue. It might just be association. But is there something that we need to do? Is there some advice that we need to give specifically to the contractors or specifically to farmers who employ contractors? Things that need to be done. So it's going into that in more detail so that we have advice that is tailored to the need, and also advice that is endorsed by the Ulster Farmers Union, NIAPA, National Beef Association, etc., and by the private vets. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, so you've had, since November, you've had this report, you've had meetings, you've thought about it. What's actually been done?
Well, I've explained we've sharpened our advice. We're taking it forward with the industry, but also we've been engaging with the development of the new rural development programme, because we can see avenues that would be positive for the industry. Training is seen as possible, but also, as Kate has mentioned, there may be barrier methods to keep, in particular, badgers from entering feed stores. And the Badger Cattle Proximity Study, which will be with us very shortly, but it has been indicating that where badgers do enter into farmyards, it's generally not into cattle housing, but they do know where the feed stores are. And spilt grain is an issue, either at the feed store or outside the feed store, and they're opportunistic feeders. And if you have solid doors and the feed locked away, well, that removes the incentive for a badger to come anywhere near the cattle housing. So that might be an opportunity for some capital funding. It might not be very expensive to do, but it might be very worthwhile to do. So we're working through that as well.
Okay, thank you. Joe Byrne, Deputy Chairperson.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Again, just like yourself, I'm a bit disappointed that the Strategic Partnership Group has not yet been set up. In relation to the facts, we have spent 317 million up to 2011. And Kate, you reckon that in the current round, we're talking about 30 million per annum. How much of the 30 million goes in private vets sector? Number two, the guard vets and administration. And number three, the compensation total for the 2013 figure of 8,271 cattle.
I can the figures here. See. Sorry, Mr. Byrne, which? Well, I have.
I reckon of the 30 million between the private vet sector, the Dard vets, stroke administration, and three, the compensation total for the 8,271 reactors.
Right. Well, I have the 12-13 figures. So compensation was £16,157,933. PVP costs were £7,379,000, and our overall staff cost, now that's more than Dard vets, that's all the staff involved in the programme, yeah. 6,480,431.
Thank you. So really, there are three groups that are earning a living out of this. In relation to the compensation, am I right in saying that the meat plants can still buy these reactor cattle at a discount of £220 per annum?
We have the meat plant. We've put that out to tender, so that's a tender process.
Yes,
so
but I'm just dealing with the facts. Am I right in saying that the average price per reactor cattle paid by the slaughtering house was £223 per annum?
I'm not sure of the actual figure, but it's probably around that.
But I think, sorry, we have to actually, the department here has to tender for those processes, for that, and so we're very much on the basis of having to take whatever the best offer is for them. There is only so much we can do to actually achieve a value for those animals. There isn't the same demand for those animals as there would be for others, obviously other cattle. So you can't compare like with like, you're not comparing like with like.
That begs the question, does the animal who is a TB reactor that's sold into the meat plant, it does go into the food chain, and there's no discount on the sale side or the sale price on the finished product that comes into the meat plant? Is that right?
All the reactor animals that the department purchases do go to the meat plant. At that point, they're subject to meat inspection, to detailed meat inspection. Those that pass enter the food chain. Any that don't pass because of having a tuberculous-like lesion, or indeed, and we do have a number of these animals which have been treated with, say, an antibiotic or another substance. Those animals have to be slaughtered to remove them, remove the risk from the TB risk from the farm, but they're not eligible to enter the food chain. So at that point, the department not only has to accept that there'll be no salvage animal value from those animals, but we have to pay the meat plant for disposal of the animal byproduct. So the price that eventually the department gets per head, if you like, of salvage, and I'd have to say that there's a commercial sensitivity here because it is part of an open tendering process that occurs every 3 years. But that return is the balance between the animals which actually enter the food chain, which we get salvage value for, and the cost to the department of all the other ones that have to be rendered as animal byproduct and to which we incur a cost. So it's quite a complex matter, but we do try to get the best price for salvage, but ultimately the main direction of the department is to remove disease from farms, and we do have to accept that the salvage is the lesser important side of this. We've got to get rid of the disease. We're not allowed to export tuberculous cattle which have failed the test. We can't export them to the south. We can't export them even to Great Britain. So they have to be slaughtered within Northern Ireland, and it's a buyer's market. We have to take what we can get, but we openly tender for this, and we try to get the best possible price.
Yeah, I think I would add to that just, this is, you're not, we haven't all abattoirs obviously competing for these type of animals. Some of our abattoirs in Northern Ireland, because of the contracts they actually have, are restricted from tendering for this type of animal. So it's a limited basically market that we actually have out there for animals. So it's not actually saying, well, because this animal can go into the food chain, it should be exactly the same as a prime beef animal. You cannot compare them on the same basis, even though there is nothing wrong with the animal going into the food chain.
Well, Chairman, I appreciate that, but I'm trying to elucidate the facts.
Yeah.
The facts are that in 2012, the average salvage price paid at the meat plant was £223. Now, it took about a word to get this figure, but it's in the public interest that we should know. What percentage of the 8,271 reactor cattle that would have failed the test would have gone into the food chain?
I wouldn't know for sure.
We'd have that figure, but not with us, we can tell you.
I appreciate that, because these are the important facts that we have to get to, because there's so much fog surrounding this issue and there are so many people getting a good living out of this that I'm beginning to question the sincerity in trying to tackle this problem. In fact, I used the phrase before, are we only tinkering at the problem as an illusion? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much. Robin Swan.
Thanks, Chair. Kate, the statistics give the reactors 10,896 down to 8,271, herd incidents 1,695 down to 1,479 last year. And really the department has done nothing new or additional.
Well, I'll actually maybe explain any changes that have been in the implementation programme.
Well, we've been working hard on the implementation of the programme. So whenever we come across the circumstances where there's a rise in disease or a cluster of infection, we'll increase our testing, we'll use gamma interferon testing, and we'll increase the sensitivity of the testing, or interpret the test more severely. So we're increasing the probability of removing infected animals, and it's very important then that we apply the programme properly, and that does actually make a difference to the level of disease. There's nothing specifically new that you would do about it, but it does make a difference. And sometimes the disease will rise and fall, and you've no control over that because there are so many different factors that affect it. But what we work on is delivering the programme as best we can.
There's no additional steps to the programme. And unfortunately, if I hear you correct, it's just you're following the programme more vigorously.
Yeah, but it's a good programme, and that's what you do. I mean, that's what our staff are trained to do. Our veterinary staff are trained to make an assessment of the situation, make an assessment of the risk in the area, of the risk of the animals from a breakdown having spread infection to other herds, and follow that all up. And that's a very complicated process.
Were we not doing that in the past?
We have been doing that, yes, yes.
I think maybe it would help just to give an example. For every herd breakdown, the veterinary officer would map all the farms that are around about it. Those farms would receive notification that they were on a tighter testing regime. So for every single outbreak, it creates a whole lot of work around about that to stamp out the disease in the area. There's no saying that the farm that initially shows the TB was the originating farm. It might have come from a neighbour. So we have to trace, we have to map the area. We have to forward trace the animals that have left that herd since the last clear test, and we identify where those have gone. We follow them up. We test them in the herd of destination. If they turn up positive in the herd of destination, we have to test that herd as well. So when we see what we saw in 2012, this rapid increase in disease, it really means all the veterinary machinery has to gear up to address the very much increased pressure to for tracings and testing. And I think really that's what Rolly's trying to say. And our PVP contractors responded extremely well because they can bring in assistance, and they did that. They employed more staff to get out and carry out this increased volume of testing. So that all happened without really anybody noticing, but that's why our costs went up in 2012, because of the number of, the amount of testing went up, the amount of removal of reactors went up. All that takes a burden on my staff, you know, and so it is, as Rolly says, the programme is just working its way through, but it does take quite a lot of effort, and I think maybe that's the key point I'm trying to make.
And I think I was going to add, just working that programme through in 12 hopefully had an influencing factor on 2013, and we do have, as we said, that reduction in 2013.
What was the increase from 12 to 13 again?
Decrease.
The decrease from 12 to 13?
No, was there an increase then?
There was an increase in
11 to 12.
11 to 12. Sorry, I'm not sure really if you have that figure with you.
Well, from the top of my head, at one point in 2011, August 2011, we were at 4.99, and then it went up to 7.62 in October 2012.
7.62 and then 7.32 in 13.
Yes, and as at the end of last month, it's 6.34 now at the end of February.
Okay, so nothing additional, just you're applying the programme more stringently, is that what?
You tend to go on, maybe use severe interpretation so that you take lumps that are smaller, you take those out as reactors. So you're actually trying to remove the infection before it can continue on. Therefore, your number of reactors tends to go up before it starts to come down through the increased the severity of our actions, if you like.
So just a final question, Chair, in regard to that then. So rather than introducing TVR or any other programme 3-4 years down the line, if the department was actually just following its current protocols stringently to the letter and doing the job they're meant to be doing on TB and eradication, which Rolly and Colin has just described to us, is there a chance that the department's actually just waiting out TB rather than taking any initiative against it?
No, I don't think that is the case. Like the programme is vigorously implemented. It's vigorously implemented not just in Northern Ireland, but actually in other countries as well. And that has not actually got those countries to eradication. So we're looking at doing more to actually get to eradication. You know, we've brought the figures down, and we want to bring them down a heck of a lot more, but we actually want to get to eradication, so we believe there is still more to be done, and it's not just implementing the programme.
Scotland's programme then to eradicate was what?
Scotland has for
Yeah, well, theirs would
quite
have been
some
the same,
years being eradicated.
The same programme.
same type. Yeah, well, they're all based on the on the
Strathclyde was
directive.
able to eradicate using the current programme that the department has.
Yes, but they didn't have the same level of disease ever, you know. So, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Yeah, on Robin's point, and applying that logic, I do believe that the eradication in place at the minute, eradication programme at the minute is there just to measure disease. To me, doesn't resolve it. How do you explain then that in the last 12 months, animal TB herd incidents have gone down in Northern Ireland in general, but have increased dramatically in the Ballymena DVO, both for animal and for herd incidents? The herd incidence has nearly doubled in the last 12 months, and the animal incidence has increased from 0.2% to over 0.6%.
And Robbie, would you mind taking that?
Well, Ballymena actually had a very low incidence, and during the rise that occurred over the last few years, Ballymena stayed very, very level, which is excellent. Obviously, they haven't encountered that rise, and TB will. If you get a cluster of TB in an area, it can be quite dramatic, and they have experienced that, especially in the Brushane area. The investigations that have been done show that the strain of that TB actually came from a different area of Northern Ireland. So it looks like it's been brought in and has got a hold in an area, and so they have now. I don't know what you call it. Well, call it the high incidence area, where they're applying more stringent measures to deal with the disease, and I think are optimistic that they'll be successful with that. So, I mean, the disease tends to cluster, and once that happens, then it takes time for it to be dealt with, for it to go away. But
Okay.
the programme should deal with it.
Okay, William Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when I heard on myself, I'll declare an interest. I'm fully aware of TB and the issues surrounding that. But would you accept if you go back over the last 15 to the mid-late 90s, that really, in effect, the department has made very, very little headway in relation to TB? If we look at 96, 7, 8 and look at today, we haven't moved that far. In recent times, you will accept that farmers have worked with the department in relation to testing and added tests and tests during summer time when farmers are under stress. Normally they could have waited till the autumn time to test their cattle. Now they're working with the department, and even with all that, we still have made very little headway. We're talking about 1%. Or not barely 1% down over this last year, but we could tinker with figures next year to come up to 1%, and I fully understand. And if I had a breakdown in my own herd, the first thing the department official will ask, have you any bodgers? So the bodger is a real issue. Do you accept that the bodger issue should have been dealt with more robustly in the past?
I don't know. I think it's a case of where, you know, it's not just the badger. You know, this is an exceptionally difficult disease to actually manage. You know, we are following a very detailed programme that is approved by the EU. Dealing with the badger, yes, is one of the issues, and certainly we're looking at that. We're also looking to, obviously, other areas of these isles that are dealing with the badgers. We want to actually learn from everyone. It may not just be the answer, dealing with the badger, that eradicates TB, but it's certainly one of the factors in it, and yes, we're looking to address all aspects.
Yeah, you say you're looking at all areas. Has the department looked closely at the bodger culls in the Irish Republic, for instance, or in England?
Yeah.
We do. Sorry, no, go ahead.
Well, it's just, well, we've been in very regular contact with them, and we know what they're doing, and we know how they feel that has been successful. So we are fully aware of what they've been doing and the research work that they've been doing.
You will accept that TBR has been slow. We've made probably very little headway in that regard. We're all hopeful that we can make some progress and get there in the end. But I do believe, as a farmer, and I'm talking to farmers every day, and they feel that the issue of badgers has not been dealt with robustly enough. And I mean, I'm not saying badgers are the only issue, but they are a big problem.
There's no doubt, and while research isn't ongoing here in terms of specific vaccinations, for example, for badgers, there is a lot of work being carried out in these isles in terms of actually dealing with, how to deal with badgers. So, we want to draw on all of that. We also have to look at whatever ultimate intervention happens, it has to be socially acceptable, and I fully appreciate, the farmer's role in this and the implications that TB have for the farmer. But at the end of the day, we've got to look at what will actually be acceptable across Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Okay, Tom Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. Look, folk, I appreciate that a lot of work is going into this, and a lot of work might be being done on it. But, we do have to ask the question, are we really only thinking of the age, or are we really making an impact, making a difference on this? There is that, as my colleague said, when you do speak to farmers out there, they are questioning the whole situation. Is really a difference being made here on this? And it's very, very difficult to see a difference being made in it at this moment in time. But let's hope that if we keep at it, that we will see that difference come. But what about the department's project to improve knowledge transfer of TB between the department and the private vets? How is that going? What progress is being made on that at this moment in time?
I can start anyway. So we've been working with the Veterinary Associations over a number of years, and we have, I've forgotten what I was going to say, but we're in the middle of working up a plan to get a better two-way communication with them. We ran a pilot a year or so ago, and that was quite successful, but it was very small scale, and it would have been difficult, I think, to roll out across Northern Ireland, but we did learn a fair bit from it. So we've been taking the material from that and looking to see how we could roll that out across to all practices. So we're continuing our work with that. In fact, we're meeting them tomorrow to discuss it further. And I mean, we do still provide a lot of information to practitioners through, we have a fact sheet that we send out three or four times a year. Our local offices are talking to practitioners all the time, and we send out other communications, as well as being at their annual conference. We have a stand at that and provide a lot of advice there. So I think, overall, there's a lot of information that goes to practitioners, and I hope to build on that with more information coming from the biosecurity work that's been done recently to get that across from them to farmers.
Yeah, do you want to have
I was just going to say that we used the private vets in the knowledge transfer and BVD, and as part of that set of seminars, the private vets, you see, attracted the farmers in the groups, and in those seminars we used the opportunity to convey the biosecurity message. So I think we recognise that the private vet does play that key role. He has a position of trust and confidence with farmers, and it's something that we are keen to use. The Minister has said that she is keen to see this avenue explored and developed for knowledge transfer. We've also, the biosecurity leaflet that Joanne mentioned, the PVPs, the private vets, were part of that group that we used to develop that message and contributed to the advice that we subsequently put out. And indeed, they were the two associations, the AVS-PNI and the Northern Ireland Veterinary Association, the NIVA, collaborated with us for a joint seminar where we were able to attract in 120 or so vets from all across the country. Using their offices, we were able to bring this group together and use the platform to communicate the TB messages, and the importance of quality of TB testing, the biosecurity message, and we were able to sort of use their offices to try and bring the private sector vets together so that we could then, transfer our knowledge to them. And I just finished by saying we do accept that it's very important that both the private sector and the departmental vets speak with the same message, and that's something that we're very keen to make sure that the messages that are actually getting through to farmers are consistent and are helpful, and that's the way that we're trying to use the private veterinary sector.
And as I said earlier, we're looking actually at the next rural development programme and trying to actually get funding within that actually to allow us to deliver that type of knowledge transfer, so that there is actually money available to do that. I would also just add, if the member would permit, in terms of, you were saying we've been tinkering with the edge and have we done an awful lot? This is actually a two-way issue. While the department can carry out all of the testing, we do need to have our farmers here on site in terms of biosecurity, and you make a very valid point in terms of getting that knowledge out there, because if we continue to test and we continue to remove positive animals, if we don't get the cooperation that we need out there in terms of biosecurity, we will actually not get to much further in this disease. So it's about really building that partnership, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking about the strategic partnership. It's to really ensure that we do get that engagement and get that message down onto the ground. Like our biosecurity report, while it was only in a small area, didn't deliver a good message. So we want to actually try and address that.
Yeah, it does appear though that all of these programmes or projects or whatever, it appears they're only in their infancy, and it appears that everyone that you've talked about today, you're looking to see if we can get money from somewhere to deliver these, get the knowledge on the ground and all, and to me that looks to be somewhere away in the future, and yet and all while we're waiting to put out these programmes, the TB isn't coming down. We're doing nothing really to reduce the TB, because we're waiting to get all this knowledge out and all these programmes delivered, and we're looking for money from here and from there to get all this done. And yet while we're doing this, there's nothing happening. The level of TB isn't coming down yet. It may come down a few percent this year, and it'll go up next year again and back down again, and it's going to fluctuate up and down slightly, but really common denominator is staying at the same level practically all the time. So is that really delivering to help the situation that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I would argue that we are actually delivering at the moment, and what we're doing is enhancing that, and we're looking actually, yes, to the likes of the new rural development programme to provide money to enhance what we're actually doing, but we're not sitting on our hands at this point in time. We have, as we've already said, there is training already being delivered through the likes of BBD. We have the colleges trying to educate actually the new farmers, so the message is already out there. We have a stakeholder workshop about to take place, in the coming weeks to try and deliver that message. So it's not just about the future, but it's also planning for the future. So there is constantly work being done now, but it's also about looking to enhance that, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, and one other issue, Chairman. I think if I picked you up right in response to the Chair earlier, you said about proposals you had put to the Executive, and you were waiting on a response and so forth from that. Can you share with us what proposals you put to the Executive?
No, unfortunately we can't actually, because that is the difficulty, the fact that it's confidential to the Executive at this point in time. We can't. Certainly following a decision, I would be happy, as I said earlier, to come back and talk about TVR, but at this stage I cannot do that.
And if those proposals are agreed, will that have a positive effect on the eradication?
We're talking about proposals around TVR.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I really can't go much further than that at this point in time.
Thank you.
It's a matter of professional pride probably in me, but I'm going to ask anyway. With regards to what you give to the executive, you don't have to tell me the detail. Was it simply a proposal for funding, or was it the master plan that is TVR?
It's the Minister, as I said, the TVR is cross-cutting, so she needs the agreement of the executive.
Yes.
So it is the entire package.
When did it first land on the executive table?
It has only very recently landed on the executive's table.
This month?
Yes.
When was it to be on the agenda for the executive?
We would like to have thought that it might have been on yesterday's agenda, but it wasn't.
So the department is bringing a massive piece of work that it has stored all its eggs on with regards to bovine TB, and it brings it to the executive, knowing all the issues and the difficulties with the executive. It brings it to the executive table in April, and we are to have TVR rolled out in May 2014. Why are we so late bringing this to the executive?
Well, first, before I answer that question, we've got to step back. You've said it's a project, TVR, we've stored all our eggs on. This is a research project, and we've got to be clear that it's a research project. So, in terms of it has taken time to actually get it designed and to work it through. Yes, it would have been ideal if it had been earlier, but it has taken time. It has taken an awful lot of effort and input from a range of people and organisations to get us to where we are.
But we were there, with all due respect, we were there. All the stakeholders were agreed this time last year, a year and a half ago.
Sorry, I'm not talking about stakeholders, I'm talking about the design of the project. We are still, and this is subject obviously to executive agreement, we are still working to have that implemented in mid-2014, but it is subject to executive agreement.
You talk about it being a research project, but this really is the doing bit in all of this. England is doing, albeit badly. Wales is doing. Scotland hasn't got any TB, and the Republic of Ireland do things. But we in Dard, you in Dard, the department itself has not got even to that stage yet.
No, and TVR is a research project. This is what what we're actually planning on doing will add to that knowledge. We will have to work that through on the ground, assuming we get approval, and basically we will be contributing to the knowledge, because while you say each area is doing their own respective thing, yes, that is true, but that knowledge is shared knowledge. So we can actually, by doing the work that we're doing, we will be adding to that pot of knowledge to actually look at what best suits us and how to go forward in the future.
But with all due respect, TVR was painted as this be-all and end-all. It was the halfway house between a cull and vaccinate. You had all the stakeholders on board.
Yes.
I take it you still have all the stakeholders
Yes.
on board. You have the full support of this committee to progress TVR, but yet we're only getting it to the executive now. And we could be in jeopardy of it being in the executive for a period of time. You may well fail to get it this year because of the closed badger season, because of the cycles there within the wildlife population. This could be defaulted for a further year.
Well, one, I can't anticipate what the executive's decision is going to be. Assuming that there is a positive decision, we are still very much of the view that it can be, if we get a decision that's anyway early, And we're working obviously on this to ensure that we try and get a decision as soon as possible. We will actually have the preparations ready to go once we have a decision. The Badger close season is still obviously in effect now. The close season ends middle of May. We have been working obviously very closely with our colleagues in the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, in DHSS, because there are numerous licences that have to be put in place, and it ultimately will be for the Environment Agency to decide what the timing is in terms of a licence. There is no guarantee that you can get a licence directly in the middle of May when the Badger close season starts. It might be slightly later, but we have a large window of opportunity to take this through June, July, August, September, October. And that is what we have been planning to do, assuming there is executive agreement.
I assume that whilst you have to go to the executive on this officially, I assume that you have spoken to all the individual ministers involved beforehand in order to get and to gauge their level of support.
We wouldn't obviously speak directly to individual ministers. We would be speaking to officials, and we certainly have been speaking to officials who have a cross-cutting issue with this. We have been engaging obviously with those for some time.
Okay, and they're all there's no fault lines there. They're all supportive, or at least likely to look at this in a.
Well, we're not aware of any issues.
Right, okay. Joanne Dobson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, just take it back to my initial question. Colin, you talk about getting the message out on biosecurity. Just for clarity about getting that all-important message out, and I spoke, my initial question was about the leaflet and the DARD website. Does the letter go out after a breakdown? You spoke about the letter and the range of things that you do to increase awareness. The letter to farmers, does it go out after a breakdown?
Yes.
Why not before?
Well, we do both actually. We have on our website, we have a detailed biosecurity guidance note called TB in Your Herd. TB in Your Herd. So it's tailored. It's tailored for farmers, and it's available for those farmers that are not currently broken down.
Okay.
We've also got a biosecurity code which was developed with the industry, but it's been there for a number of years, so it may not just jump out at people. It's a piece of work which is still.
Sorry, this is all on the website.
This is on the website. But when somebody does go down with TB, when they have a TB breakdown, our procedure is to provide them with a package of information which includes a variety of leaflets which are explained by the veterinary officer who covers the breakdown. That includes public health safety to the farmer and his family, because TB is a potentially zoonotic disease. It includes biosecurity advice, and it includes an explanation of the restriction notices, because the individual animals in the herd and the whole herd, in actual fact, no animals can move out of it at that stage. There'll be an explanation of what the farmer could expect in terms of the testing that we're likely to carry out on him, and how long it might be before he could expect to be freed up again.
But all that information's after a breakdown?
But that's all given out after. But
what is there before a breakdown?
Well, before there's certainly there's the leaflets or the booklets I told you about. They're much more than leaflets. TB in Your Herd.
Sent out, sorry, is there a letter sent out to farmers?
There's a letter sent out a period of time before a test is due, and that letter there's
with
a leaflet,
biosecurity information.
leaflet in it. And in addition, some of our staff on the ground have the leaflets, and whenever they're doing, say, brucellosis testing, they will also be giving the leaflets out and
but the bulk of the information that Colin spoke of with the detail is essentially after a breakdown, not before? Or is there the same quantity detailed before a breakdown?
We wouldn't send out the actual detail of the processes and procedures around a breakdown ahead of...
But biosecurity detail. I'm just concerned, you'd said about the website. Not every farmer, as we know, has access to a website, the broadband. So if they don't have access to a website, what essentially do they get? Do they get details before they have an inspection on biosecurity?
They do, and they have people, if they have an inspection or a test that's done during the year, the inspector may well give them a leaflet and chat to them about biosecurity.
But do they get, what I'm trying to tease out, do they get as much information before, or is all the detail coming cart after the horse, so to speak, after they have a breakdown? Are they getting in all the detail after they've had a breakdown? Is there as much before?
I think there'll be two. Part of our response to that is through the BVD training, and that we're able to get out to farmers before they've necessarily had any trouble with TB, impress on them, what biosecurity is, through the private vets that delivered that training under the rural development, the current rural development programme. If you can keep BVD out your herd, there's a fair chance you'll keep TB out. Certainly the cattle-to-cattle element of TB, yes, you might need to do a bit more with badgers to protect the feed stores, etc., that Ian referred to. So that and the CAFRE training, of course, for the CAFRE students, many of whom are going back to their family farms. That's aimed at getting that message across now as well.
I'm just thinking the elderly farms, there is a letter with as much detail before as after you're assuring me.
About biosecurity.
About biosecurity.
Yes.
There is.
All the points, that should be what they get there.
There's no way we'll check.
But this is also obviously annual information that's going out, an annual herd test. And as I said earlier, we target big events where farmers will be present, like the Winter Fair, like Balmoral, so that there is actually a better opportunity to talk directly to farmers rather than bombard them with information through the post.
I understand, but I'm thinking particularly of an elderly farmer. I have my own father. There's nothing like opening a letter and reading a letter to go through the details. He certainly would never be on a website, or he's not fit enough to go to the Balmoral show. So,
but there's annual information going on.
Annual information with the same level of detail as you're confident as after a breakdown.
Yes, there's enough information there to give the broad principles of biosecurity advice. To give somebody very specific biosecurity advice, obviously you need to be on the farm and you need to look at, you need to go into it in an awful lot of detail, which probably that would happen more at the time of the breakdown, or if a farmer actually specifically asked for that to be given.
So there's more information after breakdown than before.
Well, it'll be more specific, but people should be able to, there's enough information to allow somebody to take the measures that they need to take to protect their herd.
In essence, the specific information is after a breakdown.
The specific tailored information would be, because you can't unless you actually go out onto the farm.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Robin, do you want anything?
Just a quick one, in regards to picking up on Joanne's point in regard to your letters. Have you ever reviewed some of your notification letters just to make them maybe more or less threatening and intimidating to some of the people that receive them?
Policy is delegating this one to implementation.
Right. Do we have a review?
I'm going to say in advance we're not a tag team.
So we haven't reviewed them recently. No.
Could you? Because I do know, and it's come back to some of us, more when your letters come through of notification of reactors or anything, some of the wording can be quite threatening, or perceived to be threatening rather than helpful or instructive.
It's not meant to be threatening. Obviously, some of them are legal notices and they have to be written in a particular way. We have a series of letters that we send out notifying people of for all sorts of things, and
maybe softening the legal, containing the legal notice, but maybe an explanation of what it actually means.
Yes,
as a simple English, I think the campaign will.
There are some of them now which are quite specific around breakdowns that we're looking at the moment to separate the two. So maybe that would help.
Okay,
Take the member's point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to the TB issue we've talked about for so long here today, but I mean, most of us around this table probably have all been vaccinated at some stage in our lives against TB, so it's going to be very complex and hard to eradicate. Do you see vaccination as a long-term possible solution?
Vaccination of cattle?
Yeah.
You are talking literally, first of all, it's against EU law at the moment of
Yeah,
vaccination.
well, I understand that, yeah.
The EU timetable in terms of a vaccination, we're probably talking 9 to 10 years away. That's the EU timetable. There is substantial work being undertaken in England in relation to actually vaccination, and they've been working very closely, obviously, with the Commission to progress this and to do field trials. So that work is developing, but the EU have set out the timeline for that, and they really don't see this happening before 2023.
That's some 9 years away. Long time, yeah. But at least if there's an opportunity, there may be an opportunity sometime in the future.
There is, and there is a lot of work being done, as I said, to actually progress this.
I think it should also be noted that vaccination is not an assured, foolproof method. It would help. If it was permissible, it would help in the majority of cases, but not every animal vaccinated would be protected. So there could still be TB as a result. The other thing that we need to be very careful about is the acceptability of it in relation to exports. Not every country would accept a product. Okay, so we need to be careful there.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a long-term testing and approvals route that has to go through, because there would have to be worldwide acceptability that this is safe and that it is appropriate. So there are quite a number of issues that are very difficult for us to see the end result from where we stand at the moment. We see the road ahead and the approvals that have to be gone through, but the reason for those approvals are real and important, and we shouldn't just assume that vaccination will be the silver bullet that will solve TB. Sorry, but that's the reality.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
No other member has indicated. If I could just ask one question, one further question, maybe it's the best way to put that. The alternative control herds, the Minister made a statement, I think, in November in the House, around alternative control herds. How is that going?
Well, I'll pass across in a second. The work has been done to put those in place. We've worked with the industry, and certainly it had been open now for quite some months in terms of applications for alternative control herds. I think we've had one, but you want to...
No, well, we haven't any approved, and there's been some interest, but there's been nobody has taken it through the whole approval process. But we've been in discussion with the stakeholders about that.
What reasons were given that has progressed maybe the way the Minister had hoped?
Well, I think the whole thing was taken forward with the industry, with stakeholders. So it was the purpose, obviously, was to either to allow moves from breakdown herds into them in certain circumstances, and also because of the nature of them to reduce the testing, which gives people more of an incentive to take them up. But I think just overall, anybody that we talked to, it didn't suit the way they do their business at the moment. So.
Is there any way that the department can modify their system to suit business industry better? Or
well, we have to be very careful, because biosecurity is the key point to all of this, and what we can't do is relax it and allow the potential of spread of disease in an area. So we have to be very careful, and we have been in discussion, but well, I suppose we're just playing it by ear at the moment to see if people, because in the early part of the year there we were told people were very busy with other things, so I don't know maybe if they get their heads around it that they'll want to take it up, but it's not something that we'll just sit. We'll have to work with people to see what we can do, and also we have to be very aware as well that there will be an FEO mission probably to Northern Ireland in the coming months, and we just have to be very aware of that as well.
I think I would just reiterate, like, this scheme was worked up very much hand in hand with the industry. You know, it wasn't about the department imposing. It was about us protecting, obviously, our export markets, but we did work it up closely with the industry. You know, and certainly if there becomes a demand, you know, we can look at it. But there is just not the demand out there at the moment.
But our current, you know, over the winter, we maintained arrangements to help farmers if they did run into problems, both welfare or financial. So there was something in place to accommodate that.
Okay. No other members have indicated they want to ask questions, further questions. So again, thank you very much for your time. I do recognise that you've been here quite a long time. So I thank you for your time and your presence here and your presentation and your answers. It's a very, very serious subject, something we all take very seriously here. So again, I appreciate your time.
Thank
and
you.
You're still my favourite people on the planet.
We're glad to hear that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, press release?
Oh, sorry, yep. Still shoot, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, members, can I refer members to the draft press release at pages 77 and 78 of your packs, calling on the department to do more to eradicate bovine TB. Can I seek agreement for the press release to issue, and if there are any changes or tweaks out of that presentation? It's from pages 77, 78. Are members happy? Content? Okay, members agreed? Yep. Okay, moving on then. Agenda item number 6 is Reservoirs Bill. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 81 to 86, which details the main issues which members will wish to explore with Rivers Agency today. These are based on the discussions we had in closed session at the meeting last week. Can I refer members to a series of correspondence from the Department regarding Reservoirs Bill, issues raised at the meeting on the 18th of February at pages 87 to 94, issues raised at the meeting on the 25th of February, pages 95 to 99, and issues raised at the meetings on the 11th and the 18th of March 2014 at pages 100 to 103. Members should take a few minutes to ensure that they are familiar with the written information from Rivers Agency at pages 95 and pages 100, as we will be discussing these issues in detail with the Rivers Agency in a few minutes. These letters are particularly important as they are Rivers Agency written response to some of the issues raised by the witnesses during our evidence taking. Can I draw particular attention to the second and third paragraphs on pages 96, where the issue of grant aid is discussed. There are issues here that we will need to discuss in detail with Rivers Agency. The third paragraph is particularly interesting as it will involve the use of clause 69. Pages 96 and 97 deal with the issue of reservoir managers and who or what that will mean. It is, to my mind, still not clear, and members may wish to explore this with Rivers Agency. Page 98 deals with the effect on property owners and insurances. Page 101 deals with the issue of decommissioning and refers to all the planning and other permissions that will be required before the decommissioning will be allowed. Page 102 deals with what happens if a club or individual goes bankrupt or insolvent. Can I also say that a matrix of evidence to date has been tabled, which will help members to see the main issues identified by the witnesses and the clause that it relates to. And can I just commend the staff, and in particular Mark O'Hare, for compiling this all up. Thank you very much, Mark, and of course the complete team for their work over the last number of weeks and months on the whole bill and the work that we have done to scrutinise it. Can I refer members to the correspondence from the Ulster Farmers Union in respect of the Reservoirs Bill at pages 104? Can I seek agreement to add this written submission to the committee website? Members agreed?
Can I refer members to correspondence from NI Water at pages 105 to 109, which details the financial information on the scale of costs associated with maintaining and pounding reservoirs. Members will note that there are a range of costs, such as supervising engineer costs of between 1 to 2,000 and capital works of between 9,000 to 203,000. Can I seek agreement to place this information on the committee website also? Agreed? Okay. Can I also seek agreement now that we have this information to send it to all to Rivers Agency, asking them to prepare a supplementary financial memorandum? Agreed? Can I refer members also to the correspondence from Belfast City Council following its attendance at the meeting on the 25th of February 2014, which has been tabled? Can I seek agreement to add the correspondence to the committee website? Okay. That was agreed. Okay, agenda item number 7 then is Reservoirs Bill, the oral briefing from Rivers Agency. Can I ask members to note that the clerk has discovered that a friend has a reservoir and has an interest regarding water extract rights in another reservoir. The clerk has advised them to discuss the implications of the bill with Rivers Agency and not with her. So if that, just to clarify that. Can I advise members that the information from Rivers Agency at page 111 has been replaced with an updated version at pages 85 of the tabled papers. Can I welcome, sorry gentlemen for that long-winded preamble, but can I welcome David Porter, Director of Development, and Kieran Brazier, Head of the Bill team, to the committee. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attendance. Now, a total of 14 issues have been identified, and I understand that you have been made aware of these. It is my intention to take each issue one by one and seek your response before moving on to the next issue. Any issues not covered today will be addressed at the meeting of the 29th of April. So I don't imagine we'll get through all 14. I was going to add there. 14 issues. I don't expect to get through them all today. I don't expect there to be pressure to get through them all today. I would rather have a good 15 minutes discussion on each topic to try and be thorough and get as much done as possible. Members will, of course, have read the packs and read the information available to us here. So I suppose we'll go straight into the first one. Now, can I just, again, re-emphasise to members, it is about quick-fire questions, trying to get as much information gleaned out of the officials as possible, but also then the officials know the mindset of the actual committee, and they know then, and they can appreciate the strength of feeling and then the work that they will have to do between meetings or as this bill continues on through its processes. And if I can ask the officials then just to be as concise as you possibly can, but I will try and be disciplined and allow 15 minutes for each topic, if I can live up to that. Okay, the first issue then, members, to go straight into this, is an audit of reservoirs. Members suggested that Rivers Agency carry out an initial audit of reservoirs to ascertain their condition and the likely costs associated with fixing them before any risk designation is undertaken. Members saw the main focus as being the private and third sector reservoirs. Consideration could be given to a clause within the bill to defer the start of the bill until the audit has taken place. I'm going to come to you first, David and Kieran, if after what I've just read out, the paragraph I've just read out, that is the mindset of the committee at this present time. Do you want to address that now, and then I'll hand over to Joe to ask questions on it?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to come and address this. And we certainly will welcome the opportunity actually to sit down informally and go through these, because I think it allows us to come prepared to debate some of the issues. And so that was a very positive way of dealing with this. In relation to the audit of reservoirs, I think it's useful just to set out the policy journey that we were on and how we have developed that policy, because that is absolutely at the crux of why we find it difficult to carry out an audit. It's because of the policy position. So, to start, we had a blank sheet of paper
and we put out to key stakeholders, people that we knew owned reservoirs, and said, come in and talk to us because we are developing reservoir policy. That allowed us to develop the draft reservoir policy, which was then put to the executive, and they give us permission to go out to public consultation. It was subject to public consultation. We took on board the observations or the comments made by the public, and that allowed us then to confirm the policy, and that then was subsequently approved by the executive. Now, the reason why I'm putting it into that context is because we as officials deliver policy, so the policy position is very important in this, and there are two elements of it that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is that the Ard Rivers Agency would act as the reservoir authority. So that was the first thing that I want to draw your attention to. The position that we have is one step removed from the manager. So our role is to be the reservoir authority to enforce the regulations, to require people to do certain actions. So that defines what we do. The second thing that was confirmed in the policy was who is actually responsible. And it says here that reservoir managers would be responsible for reservoir safety. So that was the second policy position that was confirmed and approved by the executive, subject to public consultation, and then subsequently approved by the executive again. So those two policies, one that we would be the reservoir authority, and secondly, that the person responsible for reservoir safety is the reservoir manager, really has driven the work that we were enabled to be undertaken in developing this bill. Now, that doesn't mean that we are completely oblivious to the condition of reservoirs out there. I and the team have a very good understanding of the condition of reservoirs. I think we've actually even got a better understanding of that through this process, particularly dealing with some of the private individuals. I have to be honest, we've been quite guarded in our language because we've been trying to make sure that what we get forward is the appropriate bill without causing panic out there about the condition of particular reservoirs. So whenever we talk about, we know that we're a little bit concerned, or anecdotal evidence, which we've used that word in the policy document, anecdotal evidence indicates that these may be bad. We have more than anecdotal evidence. However, we need to be careful because we're in public record or in public view here, and we need to be careful that we don't cause complete panic or concern about those reservoirs. So hopefully that gives you the context of why it's difficult for us to then produce a single document that is entitled Audit of Reservoirs.
Okay, I understand. Joe, you want to...
Yes, Chairman. I welcome the presentation, David, and I welcome the fact that you're pointing out the fact that there's two policy issues: the Reservoirs Authority, which you are as a Rivers Agency, and then this distinction about the manager owner of reservoirs. I think, however, given that we're embarking on something that's quite radical, and given the fact that there's quite a lot of uncertainty among the third sector and the private owners, could it be, however, that this was overlooked in relation to doing a full-scale audit? And if it was overlooked, then can it now be revisited, whereby, for example, 200,000 probably would be able to cover the cost of a comprehensive audit, and there would be Dar's department, being the fact that they're the sponsoring department, give that serious consideration.
Okay, yeah. It absolutely wasn't overlooked. We did consider it, and as I say, we know a lot about the condition of many reservoirs. Now, it wouldn't be completely exhaustive, but we know the condition of many of them. It's an interesting that you say £200,000, because again, we have had those discussions about how much could this potentially cost, and how can we do as a department actually to help this process move along. I would still have a difficulty in removing or moving the fundamental responsibility for reservoir safety from the manager to the department. So if we stepped in and carried out an audit, or we stepped in and did something, that changes that role. However, that's not to say that it's impossible to have a first inspection carried out in some way assisted. And that may well be something that we could explore a little bit more, and particularly, not to jump down your list too far, Mr. Chairman, but maybe in relation to the grant aid. there may well be something that we need to think, because our thinking in around the grant aid has always been about the works. And maybe, to be perfectly honest, maybe we're too focused on the works, and maybe there is something that we need to explore with the committee and then possibly take to the Minister to say, you know, is there something that we can do to assist reservoir managers with the early stages of this bill, which is a better way of getting an audit of the structures, because it answers the questions that we need answered, but without removing that responsibility from the individuals to the department. So it keeps that responsibility clear. But that's something that I'm happy enough to explore.
Just a follow on, Chairman. Yes, I can see the get-out clause that you're looking for. But I think it's fair to say, however, given that this has been visited purely on the private owner and on the third sector, and given that it's come as quite a shock to them, surely it would make sense to have a single benchmark audit report done by the department to make sure that everybody was on the same page, with a clear understanding of their roles and responsibilities subsequent to the initial report.
Yeah. And again, I have difficulty accepting that this is just private sector owners. I do accept that they feel that disproportionately this impacts upon them, but there are many private or public sector reservoirs that are not to standard, and Camlock is the obvious example that we've talked about at length. Northern Ireland Water talked about it, Urian Mourne talked about it. That's not a private reservoir, but it needs £2.5 million spent on it in order to bring it up to standard. So I don't accept that it is purely private owners, but I do accept that they feel it may well be disproportionate. On the wider point, Joe, I would agree it would be good to get that wider view, that wider understanding. I'm happy enough to explore how we can do that. I'm happy enough to take that to the Minister if we can agree some sort of proposal that could move this forward. I will not change, however, the responsibility of reservoir managers, that they are responsible for reservoir safety, because that's what the executive agreed. That's what was subject to public consultation. That's what I've been told to do. So I can't change that fundamental policy. We're past the post on that one. But I am open to explore how we can assist, and particularly the private and third sector owners, to understand the condition of their structures. Because the other thing that I would say about the condition, because I've told you I know quite a lot about the condition of them, there are some out there that I know if people would just get an engineer to talk to them, they would get some comfort. There are people out there that are concerned that do not need to be concerned, and if only they would get an engineer, instead of objecting to this, if they could get half a day with an engineer, I know there are people out there that would get comfort out of that, as opposed to alarm. Now, equally, there are some out there that I know that there's bad news, but there are some people out there that are annoyed about this that don't need to be, that if they got professional advice, it would help them, and I can't stress that enough.
That's fine, Chairman. Just a one-wee comment I'd make about the Camlock lock. Am I right in saying it was owned by trustees, none of whom seem to exist now?
Yeah.
And really, the Newry District Council is almost managing authority rather than the owners. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay. You're absolutely correct that Newry is not the owner of the bed and soil. The owners of the reservoir or the dam structure itself were brought in by legislation, and there was a water board or water trustees, so you're correct in that, all of whom are now deceased. But I don't see that Newry and Mourne have stepped in the absence of them. They also have water rights from that structure. They also use water from that to control the water levels on Newry Canal, and also Northern Ireland Water extract water from that lake or that reservoir. So, irrespective of the problem with the deceased trustees, Northern Ireland Water and Newry and Mourne are reservoir managers because of their own activities on that structure. That's some of the discussions that we've been having with them.
That's right, sir.
Okay, on this issue, and there seems to be a fundamental here. I know that the committee don't know and can't relate how, by you doing an audit, an initial audit, whether with a body of engineers or one engineer doing all the work, probably getting it for a more efficient price, doing all 151 reservoirs, finding out exactly what state they're in. By doing so, giving comfort to the people you talk about who at the minute are fearful. At the very least, giving the information, the bad news, to the people who need to hear it.
Yep.
I don't see how that actually shifts responsibility onto Rivers Agency, whenever it is clearly, through common law and everything else, the responsibility of the reservoir owner. I don't see, how do you get the fact that that will shift responsibility from the reservoir owner onto you, just because you have done an audit of reservoirs?
Well, it's quite, let's take a poor condition structure. So we are the employing authority to that engineer under a contract. The report then belongs to us, and that report says the reservoir, and let's take, because you see it clearly whenever you push the extremes, that reservoir is at the point of failure. And as a professional agency within central government with highly qualified people that understand what that means, we could not then say, pass that to the reservoir manager for information. We would have to react to that. And that then would change the fundamental of who was actually responsible. So we actually need the reservoir bill in to get that information, to actually say, reservoir manager who owns this structure, you need to do something about that.
So you're tiptoeing this, you're tiptoeing this bill in order to be able to do something. Because this is a fundamental, because when you have 3 paragraphs of a financial aspect to this bill, when you look at the information presented in the Scottish one, there is a glaring blind spot here. It's as if you're going to the executive with a blank cheque and saying, please fill this in, and we will add the notes as we see fit.
Well, but we're not actually asking the executive for any money, because what we are doing by this bill fundamentally is there is a responsibility on private owners today. They are not doing it. We are going to make them do it. This is true regulation. This is not about bringing in a new duty. They are failing in their duty. I know of reservoir managers who have, or reservoir owners who have an engineer's report and are not acting on it. They need compelled to do that, and with defects. And we also know that on average there are about 500 people that live below the private reservoirs. So an owner who has a report signed off by an engineer saying something needs done, and they're still happy enough to say, well, that's for another day. And there are 500 people on average potentially at peril downstream of that. So that is the fundamental that we are trying to bring in. It's not that we are tiptoeing around in order to get this in. It's not that we're trying to avoid this. There is a responsibility on owners today, and I believe they are failing in that. They are not managing their structures in a way that is reasonable. And thankfully we've had no failures. Thankfully we have had no failures or no fatalities. But if we do, I do not know what their defence is.
But that's the same today as it will be the first day that this bill is enacted. The difference is that you then will have the power to do something.
Yes, correct.
But if you were to do a reservoir audit and basically lay it on the line to these people, then surely the onus will still be on them, whether we have the bill or not.
Well, if we can get a situation where I can help them to do that,
yes,
that keeps us, as a department, then still acting as a reservoir authority, that we are saying to them, if you're having difficulty getting the fact that you have to spend money on a reservoir and you have to spend money on an engineer, maybe that's the bit that we need to help in order that we get the level playing field, as Joe put it, that we can get that understanding, uniform understanding, and maybe it will get everybody to sit up and pay attention.
Yeah, but surely if the responsibility is on the reservoir manager to make sure that his structure is safe, the onus is on the department to actually find out the detail of what is safe and what is not.
And as I say, we have much of that, but I have been very careful in the examples that we have used so that we don't cause unnecessary alarm.
But how did you get this information?
Well, we got it through a number of different means. Some was through our involvement with planning decisions and planning issues, where under PPS 15, flood risk assessment, something has been identified, and therefore we've got information through that. We've also know of some of the structures that we're involved in, and also some of the where there's designated water courses over or in adjacent to a private reservoir and dam where we have some historical dealings with. We've also been out and talked to lots of people. People did come to the stakeholder groups, and it was one of the first questions that we asked them was, have you had an engineer look at this? Do you know anything about your condition? Who's inspected it? Roughly what condition is it? How long is it there? What's it made of? Is it overgrown, or is it in good condition? So we've gleaned information from a lot of that. Plus we also then did the piece of work on the reservoir, the community asset report, and that required one of the team to go out and actually find some reservoirs and where we could find no published information. We actually went out and looked at them, so we also gleaned some information from that. So it came from a whole myriad of sources as well as from the institution itself.
Okay, Joe Byrne.
Yes, Chairman, just on that issue. I'm picking you up, David, that you have quite a bit of information regarding a lot of these reservoirs. So is there a file marked secret where you have the intelligence, and this would raise concerns and alarms among those that may feel that they are a reservoir manager unwittingly, and they're very concerned about what you know and they don't know. Thanks, Chairman.
Well, there's no file mark secret. It's probably a lot of it's probably in our heads again, because a lot of this is gleaned from conversations that we have had with people. But the one bit of comfort that I would give to people, and again we have said this numerous times to people through the event that was here, plus our own stakeholder events, is whenever people have been saying about them being alarmed about the structure, we keep giving the advice, go and get an engineer. And that's not given just because that's the general advice. That's given because I know that there are some people out there that are unnecessarily frightening themselves, and if they got some professional advice, they may well be in a better informed position. Now, that doesn't make the problem go away, but I think it will make the quantum or the size of the problem they're facing a little bit more realistic.
Ian, I'm going to bring you in. We're only talking about the topic of the audit of reservoirs.
Yes, I understand.
That's
Understand, Chair. There's just something there I wanted to follow up on that point that you were making. So, just to clarify, David, are you saying there that you have knowledge of perhaps a private reservoir out there that there is problems with, right? Yeah. And if you're saying that there, then surely if something happened tomorrow morning or tonight, then you, as a department, are implicated in that whole inquiry, if you like, because you have the knowledge and you're doing nothing about it.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's a very, very good point. And that's why for the last 2.5 years I've been working at Camlock. I chaired the meetings between Northern Ireland Water, Newry District Council and the Richardson Estate. It was me that called for that meeting and brought those people together because it was drawn to my attention. It was drawn to my attention personally, actually, because I received a letter from, it was Alan Cooper in this case, signed by a panel engineer saying, in his opinion, that was the worst reservoir in the UK, worst condition reservoir in the UK. And as an engineer, I received that letter personally and went, I need to do something about this. And we started that informal process with those groups to try and work out one who actually is the owner stroke manager on this. But it was my whole focus on that is to get those parties to get a civil engineer, or they commissioned an inspecting engineer's report. They cleared the bank. They put in monitors. They put in a system. Not me. It wasn't for me to go in and do that. My job is to get others to do their duty. That's what this regulation is all about.
Can I say, Chair, as well, sorry, that maybe setting aside what David is saying a little bit in terms of the practicalities of this, a lot of the powers that would enable us to do the survey are only contained in the reservoirs bill. We wouldn't have a power of entry. We couldn't go to a private reservoir owner and insist that we inspect the reservoir or send a panel engineer to inspect the reservoir. The powers of entry that we have, my understanding, is in the drainage order, and that's where there is an emergency.
This is a survey to gather information. So there's that. Some owners may resist and may not want to be involved, and we've actually heard that. I've heard that here, where some owners would not want a reservoir engineer on their property looking at their reservoir, for fear probably of what the reservoir panel engineer would say. Now, a lot of them have not, as David has alluded, have nothing to fear, but others, or little to fear, but others might have. The other once we receive or would be in possession of that information, we would be obliged to share that, of course, with the reservoir owner. We couldn't make that reservoir owner do anything with that information. We couldn't make him, whereas in the reservoirs bill, we could enforce the outcome of an inspection report. So we would be in a limbo situation where something was known and the reservoir manager or our owner wouldn't want to, or wouldn't feel that he would want to do anything with the reservoir, and we wouldn't be in a position to enforce that either.
Okay, Alban Wall.
Yes, when you do mention there about there's 100 houses or 500 houses downstream where and down below it, where does that put the planning service? And God forbid if something happened and you say there, what would be the reservoir owner's view? What would be the planning service's view?
Oliver, if I can, I'm going to try and just keep focused on the audit of reservoirs. There's a planning section coming up. We may well get to it today. If you can just hold off, that'll be okay. Ron Swan.
Thanks, Chair. David, just to pick up on just trying to get my head around whether the information you know makes you liable or not. You said you couldn't go in as an agency and do the audits because you might receive information that you would then be forced to take action on. And then latterly you've said you have in your head an idea of the condition of the reservoirs. So in that statement, are you admitting that you are aware there are more reservoirs right there rather than Comlock that need action taken now?
Yeah, and I think I've said previously to the committee that I do not believe that there is another problem the size and scale of Comlock.
I'm not talking about the size and scale of Comlock, just the very specific is, are you aware of another reservoir apart from Comlock that is in a dangerous condition?
Well, I am aware of reservoirs that are in need of attention.
What action are you at this minute in time taking on those?
We are bringing forward a reservoir bill to address those.
So if they fail in the meantime?
The individuals are responsible.
But you're not, even though you're aware?
We are bringing forward a reservoir bill to address that, because this is a known gap. So that's why we have been working for the last 3 years to bring forward a reservoir bill to address this issue. We do not have the powers to address this issue today.
In the instance of Comlock where you did intervene, and you personally on behalf of the agency, I assume was your responsibility, what makes that case different than the other ones?
Well, in that particular case, it was because it was so stark, one, and secondly, because of the groups that were involved. So we knew that we could work with Northern Ireland Water, that they understood the hazards that dams and reservoirs pose, and that they have a reservoir stock that is in very good condition, and therefore by taking that issue on, that we knew that we could actually try and improve that situation in the absence of powers. Now, if we try to do that with a private individual, they may not wish to talk to us, choose not to talk to us, and we cannot compel them to. We knew that we didn't need to compel Northern Ireland Water or Urian Moran. We also purposely took that as an issue to test some of the issues that we knew we would be facing. So, for instance, Joe mentioned earlier about the ownership. It took us about 12 months to work out who actually are the owners. And those are the sorts of things that we actually welcomed, that we had the opportunity to do that. before the reservoir bill, because at least it informed us about some of the types of the issues that we're going to have to address, which is, for example, why there is no time limit on us putting in or giving a designation. Because you have 6 months to register, but there's no time limit for us to make the initial designation. That was purely and simply because of the work that we did in Camlock, because we recognised that if we said, Dard, we'll give you a designation within 2 months, we would not have been ready if there are other complicated cases of land law and historical legislation of trying to work out who actually is the owner of Camlock. Was the question that we tackled for about 12 months before we actually got an answer. I think there will be other complex cases in that to try and find who actually is responsible, who is this, because a lot of them have passed down through trusts or through wills or through companies that have closed and wound up, and then somebody else has taken those assets. It is a very complex picture out there, and that's why Camlock was a good one for us to see what actually are we taking on here and how can you actually solve some of these problems.
Chair, I think we've established in previous meetings that there's a total of 51 reservoirs that are either going to be in public ownership, partnership ownership, or orphaned.
There are, well, we now have just 6 unknown.
But in total, I think there's 51 reservoirs that are in public sector management.
So in public, there's 77. There are 59 that are private or not public, and we think that there are 9 that are not-for-profit organisations.
Say 59.
Yeah.
You say you're having to take forward legislation because some of those owners may resist.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them have resisted to date? Have you sampled those 59?
Well, none of them have resisted because we haven't got a reservoir built. So
have you approached them in the same way that you did with Camlock?
Well, there are none that have been drawn to my attention that require as urgent attention as Camlock. Camlock is the worst example. I've said that to the committee before. I don't expect to find another Camlock purely because of the size of the lake, because of the condition of the structure, and because of the number of houses that are downstream. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of comfort. I know for a fact that there are reservoir managers and owners out that have reports by engineers, and they have not actioned the matters in the interest of public safety.
Chair, I'm not going to labour this anymore, but I would raise a concern that if the agency is in knowledge of reservoirs that are in any state of misrepair, that surely there should be a duty of them to inform the owners in some shape or form, whether there's legislation there or not.
Yeah, point taken. And again, David would say, well, we are acting by the fact we're bringing the bill forward, but there seems to be an immediate issue there.
Well, if there was something, if somebody would draw another Camlock to my attention, I don't think I would sleep in my bed at night. So take from that, Camlock is the worst. I could not wait for the reservoir bill to act on Camlock. To date, nothing else has been drawn to my attention requiring me to act as quickly as I felt I had to in Camlock. But there are reservoirs out there that need attention.
Okay, Joe?
For the sake of argument, in an abstract way, does that mean, therefore, David, irrespective of who would commission the audit or pay for it, if there was a comprehensive audit of the entire lot of reservoirs, then there could be a red light traffic system applied? Danger, red, amber, moderately dangerous, and green, okay.
Yeah.
But everybody would be starting from a clear picture.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Can I just ask, because if we break this down, still on this argument of why can't Rivers Agency do an audit, a complete audit? You've stated that there's 59 private or in third party charitable states, not for profit. All the rest are public sector, so surely there should be no issue there with regards to getting engineers' reports and then also entry. Need be?
Well, I wouldn't say there was no issue in terms of that, but as you've also heard, a lot of them are compliant with the spirit of the 75 Act. So, for instance, the 48, I think it is, at Northern Ireland Water, they are compliant, so there's no need to get entry because they are compliant not with our legislation but the spirit of our legislation, because they're compliant with the spirit of the English legislation.
So it really comes down to the 59.
Well, there's 59 plus there are some other of the public that we know have had no recent inspection, and there may well be some minor defects.
So you're talking about maybe 60, 69, 70.
Yeah.
So there's 70, and if you're doing 2,000 pop for an inspection reservoir, well, you can do the maths. Not a great amount of money, but what it would do is it would encapsulate all the detail that is needed for you to make informed choices on a bill, but also for MLAs to scrutinise whatever bill comes forward. And that's the catch-22 we're in.
Yes, it is.
Now, if you're telling me there's already reports out there that you know are done and people are taking a blind eye to it, surely then that's even more reason why Rivers Agency should take this issue up and do it, so that basically you have the knowledge, you then can, and you then will know exactly what has to happen. So when you get the bill in place, you then can enforce that. Because at the minute, if there's engineers' reports going on and they're just sitting on a shelf, there's an issue there. So this has to be dealt with, but it's how it's been dealt with is the issue.
But today they are not non-compliant. So a reservoir owner today can take that report and go, thank you very much, that's very interesting. My risk management strategy is to place it neatly on a shelf.
Yes, but you will then have that information.
Yeah, but
it's
I can do nothing with that. I have no emergency.
Yeah, but until the reservoir bill is enacted.
Yes, but I have no powers to do anything with that information. So
until the reservoir's bill is enacted.
So we need the reservoir bill in order to keep that responsibility for carrying out that inspection, appointing an engineer and carrying out that inspection in the right place. Now, the bit that I can see, because I agree 100%, I would love to know the condition of all these structures. I would love to have an inspecting engineer in all these, because then I could write a much more definitive case on, here's the big grant scheme you need, Minister, take this to the executive, get this approved, and we could take that decision now, because if it turns out to be a relatively small figure, this isn't worth fighting and arguing about in terms of public safety. Let's get on and do this. But the fundamental of where that responsibility for reservoir safety sits cannot be compromised. It is in common law at this moment in time. It rests with the owner. We are formalising that position. I will not compromise on that position at all. And if that means then that we can't go forward with the reservoir bill, I'll put this out as well. I've no issue with that, and I want to be clear about this, because all those private owners are on notice. Nobody in Northern Ireland that owns a reservoir can say they do not know that they are unsafe. So if this falls, it's not that this all goes away as a problem. They are all on notice. The only reasonable thing that any private owner can do is to get an engineer, and the big difference is, at least on the reservoir bill, they have the prospect of grant aid. If the reservoir bill falls, there is no grant aid. You fix your reservoir and you're on notice that you hold something that's a hazard. And
but if the reservoir bill falls, we as a committee will still expect Rivers Agency to deal with this issue.
But we have no powers.
Yeah, but you'll have to bring forward a
and
bill.
The powers that we would bring forward would be the reservoir bill. So we get back to the same point, because what is set out here in terms of what we are going to do, appointing a supervising engineer to be there at all times, routine inspections every year, and then an expert and inspecting engineer coming in periodically. No matter how you look at it, that fundamental is correct. So if we're asked to bring forward something different, we will bring back those same fundamentals, and that is the problem. We will get back to this same point of having this discussion.
With regards to power of entry to private owners, some of these will be feeding designated water courses, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Surely you have the power to walk designated waterways.
Some of them aren't, but
yeah.
So
And the information that you've gathered or gleaned either by tripping up on it or finding it from other sources. If that was compiled, what would that look like?
Well,
and if you shared that with us, how would that affect the...
Well, I'm sharing much of that with you. Camlock's number one, you know, and actually, whenever I was chairing the informal sessions with Northern Ireland Water and Uri Moran, I actually said that. As soon as I have a reservoir bill, this was the encouragement to get them to actually do the things that they've done. As soon as I have a reservoir bill, you're number one in the enforcement, because I am really concerned about Camlock. But thankfully, things have been done. There's works ongoing. There's an inspection report. So that's why I'm comfortable talking about it, because things are in place. But the things that are in place are exactly the things we've written into here. This is what needs done. Now, I know it has an impact on people. I know that people at this moment in time, can't see how they're going to deal with this. But what fundamentals in this are the right thing to do to ensure reservoir safety. And then we maybe need to think about the ability to pay or a grant scheme or assistance. But that's not about compromising what is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. And then we'll worry about who pays and how pays and how we can actually assist to get this thing moving out. We need to almost separate out those as two separate issues.
Yeah, but you understand, for people to scrutinise a bill, and there's blind spots in a bill, we have to invade that blind spot.
Yeah.
We have to try and get as much information as we possibly can in order to give us an informed decision.
And I take that on board absolutely, and we've given the commitment to do a supplementary financial memorandum. We will do that. Just so that I explain maybe why Scotland have a supplementary financial memorandum. It's supplementary because it was brought in after the main explanatory and financial memorandum. As its name suggested, it was supplementary. It was brought in through, I'm not sure whether it was committee stage or certainly through the legislative process, because they didn't have a grant scheme in the face of the bill. And therefore, whenever the amendment came in, we need a grant scheme, they then had to bring in a supplementary financial memorandum in order to justify that amendment to the bill. So that's why they have it. It's very loose. You know, you quoted yourself. It says that it's between 2,000 or 1,000 and 1.2 million. That was per reservoir. You know, that's not sufficiently robust to take a bid to a minister or to an executive, because you say, well, do you want me to multiply 50 by 1,000 or 50 by 1.2 million? Which do you want it to be? Because if I took that to the minister, I know she'll show me the door, you know, because she couldn't make an informed decision about that. That's where we need some way of finding, of assisting, if we need to assist the owners to carry out their first inspection, so that we then are informed and we can take that information and then work on the bigger grant scheme, because then that could well at that stage be informed and could actually be an actual figure put into that based on the information on that. But we can't do it beforehand, before the bill, because of the responsibility and that potential shift in liability.
It's something I can't see, the shift of responsibility. I can't see how that shifts by doing audit.
Yeah.
I really, that's fundamental for me. I cannot see that shift.
Yeah. Well,
but it's something that maybe you could address, or I don't know that we could ever get a meeting of mind today.
But can to help, is it worth exploring, and maybe we'll do it more in the grant scheme, about the potential assistance that we could give? If you take my argument about that the fundamentals of this are right, the process is right, independent engineers looking at this and giving proper informed professional advice as opposed to layman's hearsay, that fundamental is right. And then we have an issue about how we fund this and how we pay it. And is it fair that individuals or groups or community groups or whoever actually pays? Whenever we actually get on to the grant scheme and what that looks like and whether there's anything we can do at the early stage, that may be the mechanism of actually finding a way around this, that actually it's the assistance to do what is right that we need to focus on, as opposed to is this the right thing to do? Because I have heard no argument that says this isn't the right thing to do.
No, I don't think this has to be dealt with. It has to be managed, but it's how then it's what that looks like. It's what that amounts to. Not only in cost, by the way, and in how that looks on a bill, basically. But well, I'm struggling for time here, so we know there's an issue there,
Yep.
and there has to be some sort of
Yeah.
bridging of that.
Yeah.
Move on to the second issue, and
2 and 3 together.
we'll take 2 and 3 together. The adverse financial impact on the private and third sector. Members have expressed concerns that the private and third sector will not have the means to raise the finances. Therefore, the bill will have a disproportionate adverse effect on this sector. And then the availability of information on likely costs associated with the bill, which is something similar to what we've delved into. That there's a lack of information on financial costs within the bill. Again, this will leave the private and third sector at a disadvantage, as they will have no indication of potential costs. Rivers Agency could perhaps address this omission by way of a supplementary to the explanatory memorandum. Rivers Agency needs to address the pros and cons of identifying the costs of an engineer, and they take on an oversight role regarding costs and include it in clause 106. So can they take on an oversight role regarding costs and include it in clause 106? Now again, that's something, it's delved into what we've already debated.
Yeah.
But I'll bring in Joanne just for an initial question on that, and then I'll ask you to respond.
Okay, thanks, David. Apologies for missing the start of your briefing. Can you outline then what's your response to the concerns which have been raised with us by the private sector farmers and landowners who are concerned that they do not have the resources to comply with the legislation? And it would be, I feel, what I'm hearing, it would be virtually impossible for a farmer to get a loan from a bank to fix a reservoir, because the bank wouldn't support them because they don't see the benefit
As an asset,
of.
yeah.
So that's going to be, it's going to be impossible for them to get that finance. And we know, as the chair's outlined, we know the public sector will be able to through their taxpayer, their rates, whatever. So that creates that disproportionate effect. So, and following on that, do you have an estimation as to how much it will cost those public sector bodies to inspect, supervise and maintain the reservoirs?
Okay. I've no opposition to any of this. I'd be pleased to hear put up a lot of barriers in the first one, but this one I couldn't agree more. It was the single biggest issue that we got through the stakeholders, the engagement of the stakeholders. It was the single biggest issue that we got through the public consultation, and it has been the single biggest issue that I've heard in all the evidence that has been provided to you. Has not been anything about the technicalities. It's all been about people's ability to pay. And as I said earlier, I think that's something that we need to find a way forward on, that we can actually put a case forward. Certainly, the Minister also, in her discussions at the second stage debate, said that she would be keen to actively explore the assistance to third sector organisations, because that was in particular the issue. But it was very clear through the evidence that you've been provided that there are concerns about people's ability to pay from private individuals. So we're going to have to explore that. As I said earlier, Chair, maybe that's more in relation to what an initial grant would look like, and then also what the potential is for the bigger grant, because I do have some difficulty in trying to put quantum on it, because we actually come back to the issue of the audit and where that sits, and actually getting actual figures on the works that are required. But I agree 100% as well in terms of the finance. I can understand why the repair of a reservoir, a bank wouldn't view that as an asset unless they're using it for something like public water supply or irrigation or for hydropower. But I can, if it was just something that sits on your land, that at this time is just a liability, the removal of that liability, I could understand why that isn't an asset that you could borrow against or would
farmers
do.
under enough pressure as it is without this added burden and the worry of that. So you're going to touch on this then in the grant scheme?
Yeah, I think we need a bit more discussion about what you feel is reasonable, what I feel is reasonable, and if we can get to a point that we can actually have some sort of meetings of minds, something that then I can subsequently take to the Minister and say, I think this is what needs to happen to assist with the bringing in of this bill. So I'm happy enough to have that discussion.
Because for that disproportionate effect between the public sector and the private, it's, as you say, it's the single biggest issue. And certainly from the stakeholder event, it's something that was top of the list.
Absolutely.
And the possibility of a capital or a grant scheme, it doesn't really help
Yeah.
with the farmers thinking that this is coming down the line, and yet there might be a possibility for grant scheme with no hard and fact evidence with it.
And I would also reiterate what I said. There are a number of people out there that are scaring the life out of themselves over this, that if you could tell them, go and get an engineer for half a day, get better informed information, rather than being frightened of it, go into this with your eyes opened. And if some of those private owners or farmers or third sector organisations would just take half a day with an engineer who will give them some informal advice, doesn't have to be an inspection, doesn't have to be a supervision, but have it as a panel engineer, but they will give you people informal advice, and I think that will give a number of people some comfort out there.
That leads, Chair, into David, my second point. There are massive concerns out there that, particularly with the farmers, some reservoir owners, that the engineers could, as they say, over-engineer their solutions, and then they're going to face higher specification, increased costs. So there is certainly that worry if they get an engineer out what they're facing with that. So how do you alleviate its catch-22 situation? They need the engineer out maybe to alleviate some of these concerns, but yet they're very, very fearful if we get the engineer out, they're going to over-engineer and they're going to be left with a greater bill that they have no way of paying. So how do we bridge that?
Well, a couple of things. The institution give you evidence, and I think the institution evidence showed a group of very conscientious people. In fact, Alan Cooper's been doing reservoir inspections almost as long as I've been on this planet, and I thought he came across as a very reasonable individual who would have worked with people and try and give them some assistance and maybe come up with some other solutions to some of the problems that they face. So certainly I thought that the evidence from them should have given you some comfort that these guys aren't in for a quick buck. You know, these guys are serious. They live and breathe reservoirs and want to see them.
It's not us you have to convince.
I absolutely I know that. And just kind of, if an individual then feels that they're not getting the service that they require, or that there are checks within the bill that we will be doing under 106, as was mentioned earlier, in terms of the quality of submission. So again, the department has a role there to at least view and make sure that people are not sort of over-egging a particular issue. And then the fallback position is that the institution also has disciplinary powers as well, that if they are found to be wanting in this area, that can be referred to the president and to the institution, and there are very strong disciplinary procedures within the institution to deal with. So I'm not sure how I can convince people by saying that. All I would say to them is try it and see. It might not be as bad as they think.
Fear of the cost leads into the fear of the reward, so it's overcoming that. And finally then, how do you feel, what do you feel could be done to ensure that suggested alterations that they do get following the report to the reservoirs could be proportionate, to protect against this over-engineering and the fear of the cost with that? How could you then ensure this and give them some comfort from that?
Well, again, I can use Camlock as an example. The reports that were given for Camlock said, here's the report that says about the condition, and then here's a report that sets out your options. And within the second option report, it says you can do this, this is the time scale, this is the construction cost, and this is what it will mean to your reservoir, or you can reduce it in size, and this is the cost, and this is the... And so there was a whole range within that report for the person then to say, well, actually, I would like that one, or I don't want to have as much risk, I'm going to go for this option, or I like this option because that helps me in the short term, with the understanding that I might have to spend some more in years to come on it. So there's a whole range of options. An engineer will do that. They will not just come in and say, rebuild your structure. There will be a range in that. But there is a role for the department to... that oversight role is set out in 106, that we can make provisions, that we can make comment on the quality of the reports and written statements and the certificates given under that Act, to make sure that there is just some check and balance within that.
We really need to get that out, because that concern about over-engineering, the vast cost, the fear of the unknown of the costs.
I think... that we give our colleagues in an environment agency across the water a picture of a typical private sector reservoir in Northern Ireland and asked them to see if they could give us the costs associated with that they have had over many years. And the costs that they have given us are very similar to the cost that the Institution of Civil Engineers expressed today that they were here. You know, for example, a 10-year inspection between £2,000 and £3,500. A supervising engineer annual cost between £500 and £1,500. You know, those are the sort of costs that were shared with us, and they're also the average of costs that we're picking up through the information that we're gathering and that the clerk of the committee is sharing with us thus far.
I know there were some concerns at the stakeholder event as well that the shortage of engineers that were coming from England, and the alarm bells were going off thinking accommodation flights as well as engineer report, and a shortage of engineers, and they sort of the stakeholders that I was speaking to seemed to think they would sort of be held to ransom, so to speak, because of the legislation they needed to get these reports done. Therefore, it was a free for all that could be charged.
I know. I think that what we're happy to do is to share with reservoir owners and managers. These are the typical costs of this.
I think it would be useful because there certainly are very alarmed and concerned that they don't know the exact cost implications, and therefore they're thinking much higher.
Exactly, and like for example, if I was a reservoir manager and I expected to get a bill of £1,500 and come in at £5,000, I would question that. You know, and certainly the Reservoirs Authority through the bill is something that we could look at. And satisfy ourselves that, that those costs were justified in the circumstances relating to that particular reservoir.
Where's that at the minute then within the bill?
Well, that's the point I was going to make, because it was asked particularly about costs. So there is a list of quality reports, written statements and certificates by inspecting engineers or supervising engineers, inspecting engineers, other qualified engineers and construction engineers. What is not included in that is cost. Now, if you thought that there was some value in an oversight role about cost, I've no real strong opposition to that. I don't mind. I don't know that we're not going to make this. We need to be careful. We're not going to make it a regulated market.
No.
Because we don't want to become the regulator of a cost regulator. But if it was a case of that we did a survey or that we published figures about typical costs or that we asked for the institution to give us typical costs on an annual basis going forward and publish those, I have no difficulty with that. If you want that added to the bill as an amendment, I've no issue.
Surely you can only do that on the inspection reports. You couldn't do it on the actual quantitative work needing to be done.
No. And that's where whenever you put in average cost for works, that's whenever you get those sky high figures. That's what skews it, because if you put in, if all your reservoirs are going to need £5,000 spent here, £10,000 spent here, £10,000 spent here, and then you've Camlock at £2.5 million, and you average those, well, the average is going to be about £1.5 million, £1 million.
But are we sure that an inspection engineer won't come out and charge double because it takes them twice as long to walk around a reservoir because of the capacity?
Well, there will be other issues so more complex structures with there's not that many of them over here. Concrete structures where there's confined spaces, you might need more than one person going out to look at, just from health and safety. So there will be, but that's where the range is useful. That don't just expect everybody to be the same, but if we can actually publish a range, and if you want to add that in as an amendment to bill, as long as it's not that we will regulate it, but that we will publish it so that people have a guidance, so they can at least look at theirs and go, actually, I got good value, or I didn't, and I'm going to negotiate a bit harder next year. That might be
the only difference, the difficulty I would have, and again it goes around the regulated point, is that if you have a wide range, that
the top end,
by default everyone will go to the top of the range and make that the norm.
There's I think Jack said whenever he was over from 341, I think was the figure that he gave. So if you don't like the figure you're getting, you have 340 other people the price of. So you will get somebody, you will get a sufficient pool to have a competitive tender, to use civil servant talk, to get a competitive tender, to get a competitive price.
And then really, what you could only really assess as a spike, say, in a
an outlier.
Yeah,
You would
exactly.
question, why is this one
Yes.
very dear? And you certainly would have no issue asking the question and seeing what the issue was. Was that bundled? Was there 2 or 3 reservoirs, or was it a particularly complex one, or one that was in particularly bad condition? Or did they have lots of work to do in terms of nobody knew the hydrology or how it worked, or there was no record drawings? Those are the issues that will really affect the first price of the inspection. I would expect after that first inspection them to be much of a muchness after that, certainly for the 10-year inspections.
Do you think that 106 is the place for that sort of?
It's certainly the place that strikes me as that's the closest fit to it, but it's something that if you want, we can have a look at. It depends whether you want us to. I think it's probably best if we take that on as a recommendation and do it as a departmental amendment to the bill.
Or even just to assess it in the meantime,
Yes.
to see what it would look like. Come back and tell us what it would look like on the bill.
Where it would fit, and is that the right place, and what are the pros and cons of it? So we're happy enough to take that away.
Okay. Any other questions, Joanne?
No, I'm finished.
Any other questions on those, the adverse financial impact and the availability of information and likely costs? Okay, moving on then to the low risk designation. I'll take the other issue there. No, well, I'll keep them separate at the minute. Low risk designation. Is there merit in removing low risk reservoirs from having to comply with the legislation? This would remove 26 private sector reservoirs and leave 33 under the remit of the bill. How many of the remaining reservoirs could be considered low risk? I'll ask William, do you want to come in now or?
Oh, you've asked the question, have you not?
Okay, no, that's okay.
Okay. Again, I've no strong feelings about low risk reservoirs. I think we need a low category because I don't like the high and no that England has. It no risk is an odd sort of designation, so they just have high. So I'm much more comfortable with these bands. So I think we leave low as you can get your reservoir designated as low. We're certainly happy to look at what the requirements for an owner of a low risk reservoir. Now we think they're very light, but if they have to be lighter than they are at this moment in time, I'm again no strong feelings because from memory the only requirement is to register, which is no cost, put up an information board or some information at the location, and if we bring in the regulation on flood plans to develop a flood plan, so it's I think the only real benefit or cost saving is really on that ladder. That do you really need a cost or a flood plan for a low impact reservoir? Perfectly honestly, quite probably not. You know, so maybe it's for us to look at to go back through the bill, check out what the requirements are, and then to bring and have the discussion about which ones we feel we're comfortable dropping.
How would you ever have sight of reservoirs if they, for instance, if a low risk reservoir as it presently stood was low risk and you lose it from the bill, you lose the scrutiny, the inspection, and then there's a small hamlet that's built downstream, or something happens to structure. I suppose the risk designation is all about the impact. So let's say a hamlet gets built in 10 years' time.
That gets us on to the planning issue. That it doesn't matter what the designation is, PPS 15 deals with that. As long as they're controlled reservoirs, we will have a flood inundation, and that will be material consideration at planning under the new version of PPS 15. So it's not an issue. We will still be able to deal with that, not through the reservoir bill, but through PPS 15. So I would keep them in as low risk reservoirs. But what I would be happy to check and to compromise on is what the requirements are, because in essence, what we were trying to do was keep it as light as we can. If we can make it even lighter than it is, we have no issue with that.
Just to explain to us again through memory, not having checked up on the bill here, you're talking about 10-year inspection for
No inspection. No supervising engineer, no inspection. How a reservoir manager manages that is a matter for themselves.
at the present time?
Onto the bill.
And after the bill.
On the bill?
So the only requirements are to register,
Yeah.
which is a form filled out giving us details of who you are, what it is, where it is, and various capacities. To put up an information board on about who the owner is and who to contact in an emergency. And if we bring in the flood plans by regulation, that's not differentiated between low, medium and high at this moment in time, but we could do that. There's no requirement to have an engineer, supervising engineer. There's no requirement to have routine inspections. There's no requirement to have 10-yearly inspections. So we have kept it as light touch as we possibly could. If we can make it even lighter, it's not a showstopper as far as we're concerned, because they are low impact. That gets back to the fundamental. What we want to do is focus on the ones that are going to cause the harm. The ones that aren't going to cause the harm, private owner, manage them, or whoever owns it, manage it yourself. You manage that risk whatever way you're comfortable with.
Okay, Ian, you want to...
Thank you, Chair. Just on the slow facing that, you say in England there they don't have that category. They have it either
Higher nothing. They just designate high impact.
Right. So
high risk. Sorry.
Why would you want to be any different? If it's working there, and would it be fair to say there that England have hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of reservoirs, right? And because there's 151 here. We feel there that we have to keep as many in as possible to justify some kind of an operation, like this here.
There's about 2,200 reservoirs in England. They had just a volume threshold, and that made the large raised reservoir. And they've only recently moved to high and low. We put out our first public consultation position was high and low, and again, we got it very strong through the public consultation that people liked the middle band, and that's why we introduced it, because public consultation, we were asked to do it. We didn't put it in at the start, because the on-off switch to me seems like an easy enough way, just because of the small numbers. But people wanted the differentiation between high and medium. And actually, now that we've developed this and developed our thinking, I don't think that's a bad thing. It allows us then to recognise that there could be harm caused, but actually not as much harm, and therefore it can be proportionate in our management, and therefore you can have a difference between 2 inspections a year and 1 inspection a year, so there's 500 quid a difference just purely on the supervising engineer's cost, and a one-off inspection engineer, and then an interval to be determined, as opposed to it must be done within 10 years. So there will be a cost differential between high and medium, so I think that's not a bad thing, because it recognises the different level of impacts.
Thank you, Chair, for letting us know.
Okay, any further questions then on low risk designation? Okay, moving on to issue number 5 is public interest in the value of reservoirs for environmental and social recreational users. William, hand over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And some concerns have been expressed that the impact of drawdown or decommissioning. Can Rivers Agency assure us that sufficient weight has been given to the value of reservoirs for environmental and social and recreation users?
Well, I think it has within the bill, but we are in a difficult position at this minute in time that owners and managers of structures may well take rash decisions, may well wish to avoid the requirements of this bill, and may well do something that would have an environmental impact. It was something that we were very clear on the any of the stakeholder groups we had. Again, we give the same bit of advice. Before you take a decision, please go and get some professional help and advice on this. Because again, an engineer may well be able to come in and say, you don't have as much to worry about as you think you do, and drawing down or removing of this structure may not necessarily be the best option. That may well be, it may not be, and the only way you're going to know that is by, again, getting the engineer in to give you some help and assistance. Whenever the bill comes in, we're quite comfortable with the provisions in there, because we have included environment as one of the impact designations, and I think that it will be okay when we get the bill in, but we'll have to be honest with you, we are in a tricky position at the minute that there's no restriction on people doing something to their reservoir at this minute in time, but we would implore them not to without at least getting some professional advice. And then we also have to remind people you may well need other consents and approvals, whether that be planning, whether Schedule 6 from ourselves, or what else, because there may well be other consents and approvals you need, and there may well be constraints in that activity. So don't take rash decisions without getting some help and assistance on it.
You can understand their concerns in relation. You know, some of these groups may not be financially strong or able to finance any major works that need to be done. So I think the chairman touched on it early on. We almost need a grant aid. You know, you almost need the two run in tandem to allay people's fears.
Yes, and that's something we can get into whenever we're talking about the grant aid. I think it's starting to become clear in my mind that we can't bring in the big grant, the grant for works, because we can't take it to the executive, we can't take that to the minister. But maybe there's something that we need to do in between that could be brought in to at least get the first inspection or some of the first initial works. And if that's something that will help bring this forward, that's something then that I can take to the minister and seek approval on it. And because of the quantum that we're talking about, it has potential. You know, I'd be comfortable enough taking that to a minister.
Yeah, I think that there's merit absolutely in that. I think it would help. Yeah. Okay.
Just you talk about the impact and the environmental aspect, personality of a reservoir, maybe is a better word. Where do we see that personality in the bill? If you understand my question, where does the environmental rating?
It probably isn't that obvious. I think that one of the perceptions during the workshop was that this bill is about decommissioning reservoirs, or will lead to the decommissioning of reservoirs. What this is about is protecting reservoirs as they are. That entails a management regime in order to make sure that it's protected. That people living downstream, the 500 odd on average people who live downstream from a private reservoir, are safe in their houses, knowing that structure upstream is being well looked after. In so doing, that will mean that the environment is protected. You know, the last thing we would want to see is reservoirs being abandoned or discontinued or decommissioned simply to avoid, you know, the regime or the management regime that's in this bill. And that's why David was saying earlier, this is about having a regime that manages reservoirs well, and the ability to pay is then separate from that. Let's satisfy ourselves. Let's ensure that we are putting in place something that ensures that the reservoir is maintained and stays as it is, rather than breaching and harming, not only, you know, emptying the reservoir and destroying the environment downstream as it goes. So I don't think it's obvious, apart from the environmental aspect that comes into the risk designation. It doesn't appear that much, because this is about safety. But in looking after the safety of the reservoir, you're looking after the environment as well, and all of the social benefits that come with that reservoir. If you don't look after it, there's a risk that the reservoir will breach and it'll all be lost. And, you know, so that's what we're trying to prevent. You know, what we're trying to prevent is people downstream being harmed or killed from an uncontrolled release of water. Side issues to that are the environment for us.
And I take that point, and I know that's the whole basis of the bill.
Yeah.
But what we could have indirectly happening because of it, because of the discussion and scrutiny, you could have, and I don't mean this as a punt, it's the only way I can describe it, you could then have a run. On reservoirs.
You could.
And I think that's another challenge that we have. And actually, let's pick actual examples. Northern Ireland Water's examples of reservoirs that they're trying to sell off. As an example, some of those are drawn down for works not connected to the reservoir bill, but are a good example that show, because you can now see a picture of a full reservoir and then a picture of the mess that's left whenever you draw it down. This isn't just grass and something tidy. That's whenever you draw it down, you're left with muck and stuff that you have to fix and put back to normal. But I think there's an issue there that needs thought of as well, is is that the right place for that reservoir to be managed if it's no longer a benefit to that? And we're picking on Northern Ireland Water here. So if we don't want that, if other things happen on those reservoirs, people canoe on them, walk around them, fish on them, those aren't core functions for Northern Ireland Water. So I can understand why they're trying to offload those and get somebody else to look after them. But maybe the issue is not about trying to give it to somebody else, but actually taking that as a community asset and recognising that and then managing it a different way. And I think there may well be some challenging situations like Camlock where the council have to come in and say we recognise this as a benefit for the wider community, and the private owner, you don't own that anymore, we're going to take that over, you're going to agree to give us that, we're going to fix that up because we don't want it to disappear, because of the value it is to other people. Now, I can't see how I can put that in the bill, but I can see how I can have that discussion with people as the reservoir authority and as somebody in government, that we can say, look, don't take that option, don't remove your dam because it has got a wider value. Let's introduce you to other people that you need to talk to see whether collectively you can manage this in a different way. And it may well be that it's no longer their asset just because of the liability. They're not capable of dealing with it. But actually, as a community asset, somebody else needs to step in and take that.
That was the type of discussion that happened with Craigan Reservoir and the relationship that it has with Derry City Council, and that it was suggested go back to the owners and look to see what relationship you can build with them around this new understanding of what it is to manage the reservoir. It's that type of discussion that people have to have around their reservoirs.
I'm going to bring in Michelle. Michelle, issue number 12 deals with decommissioning.
Yeah, I was just going to, because I was going to follow on from that actually.
I'm going to just deal with two more issues. I've got to deal with decommissioning number 12, and then I'm going to ask members to talk about the risk assessment. I think that is a fundamental issue, line 2 here. Yeah. But hand over to Michelle with regard to decommissioning, just to add on.
It has really been covered in some ways by your response to the chair, and I suppose I have an issue with regards to Northern Ireland Water, in that there are a number of their reservoirs that they have already designated as surplus to requirement, and that they will be putting on open markets very shortly, and there may be an issue then for them, one that come out this bill then as it is coming through may then devalue, they feel, their asset, and not everyone's going to maybe want to take that on as an asset, given the fact that it's maybe, although they'll have brought it up to a standard, there may be a concern really for the future of that, and any associated costs with it. There's one in my own constituency, Lochcow, which is currently under lease with Decal, and it is something which maybe could be looked at for a community asset, and it's ideal for that, look through a hatchery or whatever. But the issues there would be whether or not NI Water or DRD would still be content then to keep that with a lease and still do the works associated with it. So I suppose it could be quite complicated even amongst departments or within government bodies, as well as to who is going to take responsibility for it moving forward. So I suppose that all needs to be.
NI Water did say that their first option is to pass on responsibility or ownership to the public sector. Yeah, maintain it there rather than sell it off to the private sector. Not that they would probably find too many people queuing up for it, to be honest with you. But
there may be issues around access to certain a number of the reservoirs as well.
I'm not sure. We can't find a way of writing that in.
No.
And I don't know how you can write that in because it's so site specific. But I think there is an onus on government to view these, if they are community assets, let's try and work to not make them go away. And it may well be that an individual owner loses that asset, but that might actually be a blessing to them because, as we've heard, these aren't viewed as assets whenever they've a big liability associated with the potential failure and the requirements of the bill. So I couldn't agree more with the comments. The difficulty is just trying to find a way of putting that into legislation in any meaningful way.
Well, I understand the issues around decommissioning or discontinuous or whatever way you want to look at it. Will there be any way that Rivers Agency can stop this happening, or will it be very much dependent upon legislation through DOE, be it through NIEA or planning?
Yeah, no, within the bill, the reservoir bill, there would be no ability to stop whatever risk management strategy an individual wants to take.
Yeah, sorry, you have a stop notice. Can that be?
Well, that would be a stop notice in terms of work. It couldn't if the option is to discontinue a reservoir, we won't have the ability to say stop that. We can tell them to stop managing their reservoir in the way that they're doing because of the harm that it's causing. But if they take the decision, I've weighed up the pros and cons. I can either manage the risk under the terms of the reservoir bill, or I can draw it down in order to minimise the risk, or I can make it go away in its entirety. We can't then say that's a better option under the reservoir bill. That's the bit that I was saying. I think there still is a piece of work within government to look at that. I don't know how you legislate for it, but a piece of work within government to say, actually, that's a fishing club that's using that. Maybe instead of the private owner having that responsibility, that then needs to be transferred to council, or that needs to be transferred to Decal, or that needs to be transferred to whoever to manage that asset because of the wider benefit that it offers.
Chair, just on clarification on the stop notice, that if someone was discontinuing or abandoning the reservoir in a dangerous way, we could stop them from doing that and go in and do it properly, or we would try and enforce them to do it properly. But we couldn't, if he decided that that's what he wanted to do and was doing it safely.
Business case.
Yeah, we couldn't stop him from doing that.
Not under the powers of the reservoir bill.
Okay, well, my concerns really from what you've said throughout even the conversation here today is that the principle of this bill is really about protecting reservoirs, but an unintended consequence of it could be that we could be losing reservoirs.
And this is about the risk reservoirs posed, and it's about managing the risk reservoirs posed. And if the right thing to do is to make that risk go away in some circumstances, we have to accept that may well be the most economically viable way of dealing with that. And that then gives assurance to the people downstream that they are no longer at risk because the reservoirs has gone away.
But some of these reservoirs may not be discontinued or abandoned because there is a risk to broader safety, but it could be more to do there's a risk to their pocket.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the ability to pay bit. So,
yes,
which again is an unintended consequence.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And we recognise that. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're losing a resource.
Yes.
Which is much greater to community and the environment and so forth.
So the message to owners out there: please do not remove your dams without at least considering what all the options are. And one of the options may well be that you're no longer the owner of it, that somebody else comes in and takes over and releases you from the liability associated with that, because it's a community asset.
Yes.
You know, and a council could go in and develop it in a park, or a hydroelectric person can come in and make electricity from it, or a Decal can promote fishing on it, or whoever. But some of them may well be lost.
And I appreciate that, David. We could sit all day and discuss the options around all sorts of reservoirs, and in an ideal world where we have lots of funding to be able to do that. But if someone thinks, well, the quickest and cheapest way for me to do this is just to drain this, they'll do it.
And I've no powers.
And they won't sit around. They won't sit around and wait for a council to come through with a bid through Europe or whatever to build a dam. They won't do that.
Yeah.
They'll drain it, and as a result, then the greater loss will be to.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree, and that is a consequence of the reservoir bill, and because we are entirely focused on risk management of those downstream potential failure, and in some cases, the best management strategy is to make that risk go away. And so there may well be cases, but I would emphasise again, don't take that decision lightly. People have time to think about this. This bill isn't on the statute book yet. This bill hasn't started, so there's already a year-ish lead-in time before we even are thinking about a commencement date and that. It may well even be longer than that. There is time for people to start thinking about this now, not whenever we actually have a bill and actually they're facing the associated cost of it. You know, this is it should be on everybody's radar now. Start to think about what your options are.
And I appreciate what you've said, but I think it probably goes back to comments from the very beginning in relation to the audit and maybe allaying fears in relation to cost as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, those points were accepted, that we have some difficulty in addressing that just purely because of the shift in responsibility. But again, I would emphasise half a day with an engineer informally may well be the best money somebody spends, because they'll get a night's sleep as opposed to worrying about their structure and the consequence of this bill.
Sorry, you'd said that, forgive me for if I haven't got this right, about protection of reservoirs. This bill is not about protection of reservoirs, it's about the protection of people who live downstream from a reservoir. It's about making sure that public safety is at the centre of the reservoirs bill, rather than the protection of reservoirs in themselves. We would hope that that's what that would mean.
Right, now I picked up on a comment that you made earlier, just to sort of protect the reservoirs as they are.
I just want to clarify on that. The consequence of looking after a reservoir and protecting people downstream is that the environment and the reservoir remains where it is and does what it's doing, and everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, and I recognise that and obviously appreciate that even from as a main principle of that.
The bill
I do
is about
understand
safety.
Just on the decommissioning, and I understand there's nothing in the face of the bill to prevent somebody from doing it if it's a business case. But if you're an area, if you're say an ASSI or an area of outstanding natural beauty,
it might be difficult.
Would there be stipulations there?
Oh, absolutely. And that's to be very clear. We're answering that question in the context of the reservoir bill. There would be other pieces of legislation that may well constrain that, and you heard from the Environment Agency talking about the natural and built environment, that there may well be other pieces of legislation that say, I know you want to do that, but you're not allowed to do that because of whatever is taking up residence or because of the downstream consequences in terms of the habitat or the environment. Or potentially also ourselves, the drainage order, you may not get Schedule 6 approval because it is a change to a watercourse. And if by removing that dam you cause a flood problem downstream, we'll say no to Schedule 6 approval. So there are other checks and balances that you have to have in place and other approvals. So, but this bill itself does not stop that action. It facilitates it if that is the right thing to do to manage the downstream impact of a reservoir field.
Okay. Ian Mallon, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just, you know, it's the following protection of the reservoirs. Then, say in a situation where somebody was going to decommission it or abandon it or whatever, right? Rivers Agency wouldn't take it on because you're the authority, right? You know, and you won't take on the responsibility of being a manager. But is there not possibilities there, you know, if for the protection, as you have said, of, you know, to hold on to and keep all these reservoirs not there? Surely a body like local councils or something like that there, maybe in the future, or these super councils, you know, should take on, and surely it should be investigated, you know, or something put on there, you know, to ensure for the protection of reservoirs that it just don't be abandoned without somebody going out there and looking to see who might take it on.
Now, I can't see how we could write that in. I absolutely agree with the principle, but I can't see how we could write that into the bill.
I know.
But whether it is something that the Minister agrees to and seeks to talk to other departments, and we actively look at this, but not because of legislation or legislative requirement, that sounds like a very sensible idea that the council look after some of these if they're for the greater good. But whilst I've said that Rivers Agency is the reservoir authority, we also manage some structures as well. So I wouldn't necessarily discount the fact that we may be one of the players that you have to consider as well. Now, that's not me putting my hands up for all these reservoirs, but you know, we are another government department. We are part of we should be in that consideration at least, if that's the right thing to do. So I wouldn't discount that.
Chair, can I just ask one more? It's just on the same thing. You know, from the presentations we have had, you know, some reservoir owners have inherited or else to see these dams or reservoirs of no value to them at all, right? You know, so rather there than, you know, if they turn around and say to you with, you know, through consultation or through negotiation or whatever, you know, then surely the onus is on somebody to find something to protect that reservoir.
I agree wholeheartedly. I would love to see that situation. I can't give the commitment to put it in as a clause in the bill because I can't see how that would work. But as a principle, it's absolutely sensible. I would hate to see reservoirs done away with because of the requirements of this, where they actually offer a benefit to the wider community, and somebody else could manage that and accept that liability and actually develop that further. And it's a matter of finding a way forward, whether it is something to the Minister to ask her to take this either the executive or the executive colleagues or the other departments. Maybe that's something that the committee could actually explore, but I don't see it as a clause within the bill. But we're happy enough actually to take that, at least have a further discussion among ourselves. But I don't see it as a natural fit within this. But I can't argue against the principle. The principle is absolutely spot on.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna raise. I did say I wanted to talk about issue 9, risk assessment, because I do think it is one of those fundamental fault lines. I know we're pushing off the time, but I want to. Oliver, sorry, you want to come in?
I just wanted to come in, just ask very, very quickly, have you taken into consideration the community plans that councils have got to draw up?
But no, we're going to deal with that next.
For frick's sake.
It's an important issue that needs time.
These reservoirs will be empty. It'll
be a topic that's discussed next time. But one of the fundamental issues, and it's as fundamental as the audit of reservoirs to this committee, whilst we believe there should have been a good body of work, more work done before the bill even produced, to inform you of what should be in the bill. The risk assessment is as big an issue, as a fundamental issue.
The risk designation.
Yes, and that's basically, well, no, not even the risk designation, but the risk assessment, whereby if an inspector comes out and says he needs to do a range of work, and that work's complete, it does not change the designation. Does not change them from a high risk, even though that could be the state-of-the-art reservoir in the world, and the possibility of that breaching is nigh impossible. But yet it's a high risk reservoir. I cannot get round that. That there should be no onus or responsibility on an inspections report.
Chairman, just to clarify that, is that because the risk assessment is based on the number of houses that are downstream, irrespective of the state or condition of the dam or the reservoir?
Clause 22.
Well, okay. So we have high, medium and low, and in order to think about this or to explain this, we actually need to think about high, medium and low in reasonable condition, and then high, medium and low subject to enforcement. That's the differentiation. If you have a risk designation and you are a reservoir owner of a high impact reservoir, high risk reservoir, and there are outstanding issues that have been identified by the inspecting engineer, well then you are subject to enforcement in order to get those done. If you do those, well then the enforcement issue goes away. That's the benefit of actually keeping your reservoirs in good condition. It makes that enforcement bit, that piece, go away. Now, the other thing that I picked up through some of the evidence that was given to you was what the terminology or what the understanding of high risk is. The people were concerned that this badge that we have put on means that something is in imminent danger. Now, that's not what we mean, because you can use the term risk in a relative term. So what we're saying is, here's a list of 150 odd reservoirs. Which ones of those, if they failed, would cause the greatest impact? And that's that first batch, and we have chosen to give them the name of high risk. Whether the term risk is what people are balking at, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say those are the ones that in the event of failure could cause most harm, but that's too long a title, so we've called them high risk. It doesn't mean that they're at imminent danger of failing, because we have a control. Getting an engineer in, doing some works, that's the control that means that it is in reasonable condition, and therefore the likelihood of failure is very low. And that's the same for medium, high, and well, if you however you depend or however you intend to manage your low, that's the same across the board. The one issue, and I've heard you use the example of this new reservoir as being sort of and the impression is that it can't fail. Malpasset in France was brand new. It was, if we showed you pictures of it before it failed, it was nice shiny white concrete. It wasn't like the old clay core stuff that we have over here. Absolutely pristine reservoir, and it failed one night and killed 424 people. So that's whenever you heard the engineers saying there's no agreed method of working out likelihood. That's what they meant. That's what's really driving them. What they mean by that is that there's no numerical way. They can't add two things together and say, and the answer is. The way these engineers manage them is by becoming very experienced and looking for potential defects, how this structure will fail, and the inspecting report is giving you the benefit of their experience. That's what actually manages this risk, is their experience deals with that. And that's why we don't change the risk designation, because the risk designation is purely just to say which ones are we most concerned about and which ones are we not so concerned about in terms of if they happen to fail. And I think, rightly or wrongly, we're getting hung up on that word risk. We might have been better with a different word, but it's not saying that that structure is high risk and therefore it's at the point of failure. It's a very low likelihood of failure, but if it fails, the consequence is...
But whatever you call it, the burden's still the same.
Correct, yeah.
With regards to the regulatory...
That's correct, yeah. Well, between high and medium, it would be yes.
Yeah, but why do we need then another layer if we remove low completely? But do we need another layer then to say, well, look, these were our high risk, but they have works done?
Yeah, but that's why I think of the non-compliant. So you have high and medium are really what we're focused on here. And across here you have the non-compliant, the naughty list, the ones that we actually have outstanding issues that we're going to enforce on. And the benefit is of doing that works is you move from the enforcement side of the page over to the, actually we're quite comfortable, that risk is dealt with, just keep doing the routine stuff and that'll be okay. And it's fine terminology that actually explains that to people.
Let me paint a picture. Let me use an example. A reservoir, somebody comes out, an engineer comes out, does an inspection report, says there should be £50,000 spent on that. The £50,000 is spent. The inspector comes out again, and the supervising engineer does all the work. The inspector comes out again, says, right, okay, that was great. Now £5,000 spent on that. £5,000 spent again. And it goes on and on.
And it will, yeah.
Why can there not be... Surely there should be onus and responsibility placed on the engineers who are qualified to inspect, to actually say, yeah, I'm content that the work has been done, all the work has been done, we have asked for it to be done, a very high range, and you know, I'm going to be coming out here every, what is it, for high, medium?
For high, at this moment in time, it's two inspections, a supervising engineer a year at high, and a 10 yearly inspection.
10 years inspection. So a supervisor comes out every 6 months. And they look at the same thing, hasn't moved, no intention of moving, and it's basically a waste of time.
Yeah.
Now, I hear what you say about this, the Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Now, if that reservoir just went like that, in a bang, 6 months, 6 monthly inspections will not pick that up.
Yeah. Well, 6 monthly inspections pick up the significant changes to that reservoir. And the 6 monthly inspections aren't the whole story or aren't the whole package. You heard from, and particularly from David McKillen, who actually is a supervising engineer, who said this is about collaborative working. This is about the owner doing some stuff, which may well be walk the dam crest once a week and write down that I don't see any dips, look down the face, I don't see any water, and tick on the sheet to say, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And if they're not comfortable, we'll then call in on the supervising engineer. So it's not just a case of we can drop in a supervising engineer twice a year and that's this risk dealt with. It's not as simple as that. The owner themselves have a responsibility, and the amount that owner is competent or capable or prepared to do will then influence how often and how comfortable the supervising engineer is with that structure. But the other thing to remind you is that what we put in is 2 years as the minimum standard. there may well be others that the inspecting engineer looks at and says, this is a 100-year-old structure that is in complete disrepair, it's high impact, and we require that to be inspected more often. And again, the example of that is Camlock. There was an inspecting engineer report done in October of last year, and one of the recommendations in that is that you're not going to 10 years until I see this again. I'm going to see this in 12 months again, because I am so concerned about this structure. That is one of the recommendations by the inspecting engineer in that he's not prepared to say this is okay for 10 years. He's given it an okay for a year, provided that things are done, and he's going to come back in and do an inspection. So it's not that you would reduce the requirement, it's for those ones that you're concerned about, you increase. And then therefore, if you do certain works in the first year, you may well be able to get you down to the minimum standard. But I don't see a situation where I would agree to something where you could actually do less than the minimum standard. That minimum standard is set because we feel that that's the reasonable minimum, and others will require much more, particularly in the first couple of years.
Okay, Robin Swan.
Thanks, Chair. David, risk or whatever you want to call it is about any buildings or damage to life or property downstream from the reservoir. Theoretically, then, if there was a reservoir with no housing or no people that contained 100,000 cubic metres, whatever, had no risk within the end or the floodplain or anything like that, it's not a risk to anybody, doesn't need to come under this legislation.
That would be a low impact reservoir. So the requirements, as we said earlier, is just to register. You don't have to appoint a supervising engineer. You don't have to have a 10-year inspection. You
just have to be registered.
You just have to be registered and assign. And if we bring in flood plans, you might have to do a flood plan. But again, that's something that we can discuss whether that's reasonable or not. But it's a very, very light touch for that exact situation that you set out. How an individual manages that themselves, that's a matter for them.
Theoretically, then, reservoir, say 2 houses below it, owned by the same man who owns the reservoir. He rents the houses or leases the houses. If he removes the lease, puts the people out of the houses, they're only structures then low-risk reservoir?
He could potentially be a low-risk reservoir, yes.
Potentially. What would be the restrictions making him not?
Well, we would need to check the flood inundation map that there aren't others.
If there's nothing else.
Let's assume, let's take this idealised. If there's 2 buildings downstream, if I owned a reservoir and there was 1 building downstream of it, I'd be trying to buy it and knock it down. Because that would potentially be the cheapest, because the burden of this goes on forever. Whereas I could buy that house, assuming that I could afford to buy it, I'd knock it down and argue that I'm not a medium or high risk reservoir anymore, and that's the end. I become a low risk, and how I manage that is a matter for me. That's entirely reasonable way of doing things.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ian Mill.
Thank you, Chair. I have the laptop or the tablet with me, and there is a chart on it to know about different designations, right? But can I ask, if it was raised to 25,000 cubic metres, does that change category high, low or mid?
What it does is it changes the numbers of reservoirs in total and also in each of the
that will drop off 20 or 30, say,
it doesn't change,
the...
it doesn't change any of the designation criteria that we would use. All that is a volume threshold. It wouldn't change any of the designation criteria, no.
Okay, that's page 85, I think. Joe Byrne.
Chair, just to follow on, twice David has mentioned Camlock Lake. He's put the flashing lights of warning. But I want to ask the authenticity of what he's saying.
Okay.
In relation to the fact that the trustees are deceased or disappeared, and I do accept, yes, that NIW extracts some water from it, and I think they pay 4,800 or 4,900 a year. So obviously they have a legitimate responsibility in some way or another, and we have Newry Council who operated for leisure and or whatever activities. Would both NIW Chief Executive and the Chief Executive of Mourne District Council have been warned about the risk that you have assessed vis-a-vis the engineer's report that you have?
The Chief Executive of Newry District Council sat in with the meetings, and Northern Ireland Water was represented by their head of asset management and their solicitor, and they, in order to agree to the requirements that were being suggested, they had to take that back and get approval from an executive director within Northern Ireland Water to get approval for that spend. So the organisations are very well aware
They're
of...
fully appraised and they're taking remedial action.
Yes, correct.
Thanks, John.
Okay, Alderman McMullen.
I think, following on from what Robin was saying there, yeah, you said you'd buy the house up if it was sitting down in the...
Yeah, if I didn't own it, but it was my reservoir, I would attempt to buy that if that would remove me from medium or high and allow me to then have a... Because that may well be a cheaper management option to avoid the burden of the bill.
Then how would you keep planning off that ground?
Well, planning is dealt with under PPS 15.
Yeah.
So in order to get planning permission, the applicant has to give assurance that the dam structure is in good condition. The only way they can do that is with my cooperation to do an inspection on my dam. And if you wanted to build downstream, I would be very clear, either if I didn't want it, you wouldn't be inspecting my dam, or if I did want, I could come to some arrangement, I would be making sure that the developer was a legally binding document that ensured that the developer was paying any additional costs as part of the development costs, in the same way that if you needed to right away across somebody's ground, they would negotiate some, or if you needed sight lines, or if you needed a water main in across something, or if you needed whatever, that you would have to negotiate with another third-party landowner in order to permit that development, and there may well be costs associated with that.
But then that has the potential of holding up the whole planning system.
Can I just say I'm going to stop there because we are going to talk about planning next week. We have an hour, half an hour's business to go through here.
Chairman, I put up with you today.
No, say again. Go on ahead, Oliver.
I put up with this now today. I'm leading on to another question here, and you jumped in twice on me here.
Yes,
now.
and I'll tell you why. Because that topic, because planning is a topic all on its own,
not do it a third
and
time.
it deserves the time for us to give it to scrutinise.
Wait till I finish.
I was going to bring you in on question 6 after question 5, but you walked out of the room. When you walked out of the room, I brought in Michelle, so you missed your turn. We will come to this. We will return to this. Planning is a very important issue.
People have turns in here before you brought them in, Chair, so don't go down that.
Yes, and we've run out of time. So you'll be brought in first. You'll be brought in first next time, on the 28th.
Down that line there, that I missed my turn.
Yes, well, unfortunately you did, because I'm the one managing and controlling this.
But it's
so unfortunately, just as I was about to call you, you walked out of the room. So I had to call Michelle.
Just wait till I finish my question first.
I'm moving.
Well on planning.
I'm moving on now, Oliver, because we've had a good lot of time on this. David and Kieran can take away what they've heard. We can come back on the 29th of April and we'll finish the other 7 points. So we basically went through 50% of the scrutiny here today. So your issue will be picked up and you will be the first to ask questions on it if you're in the room. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Some very important issues there, some not so important issues, but nonetheless issues that we have. There's some fundamentals within that. The risk designation and then also the audit and the work that we believe could have been done before now. I know you're telling us you have scary stories and secret
I have to do something to get a notice here, you know?
Yes, that is information that we could well do with in order to assess and scrutinise this bill, right? So we'll leave it at that for today. So thank you very much for your time and your solid answers and your informed answers to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, I will move on. We have about an hour, half an hour's business to go through, so I do beg your indulgence and patience.
Some of us.
Agenda item number 8 is the SR 2014/58, the Sunoses Fees Amendment Regulation Northern Ireland 2014. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 113 to 114 and papers from the department at pages 115 to 121? Can I advise members that following a review on current costs relating to sampling and testing regimes, it is deemed necessary to introduce a new fees schedule to enable DARD to fully recover the cost of services provided
Can I advise members that the regulations came before the committee at SL1 stage on the 11th of February 2014, at which stage the committee was content with the merits of the policy? Can I seek questions from members? If members are content, I put the question that the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014-58, the Snozes Fees Amendments Regulations Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objections to the rule. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, members.
Yeah, can I ask a very simple question here, and I might be sitting here too long. You see the way this statutory rule is in regard to inspections? There's a fee laid out. Why can a dam or a reservoir not be inspected under the same type of statutory rule?
Yeah, very good point, yeah. Yeah, so they would bring that statutory rule?
Because, well, I don't know, and I'll write...
This is a full cost recovery.
Because the statutory rule comes out of primary legislation.
Yeah, it would have to have...
It has to have primary,
Parent.
and it's a completely different approach. But their approach is to place the burden of maintenance on the private sector owner. This approach is the policing. It's a different approach. But I am guessing, and I will write to Rivers Agency with that comment.
No, because that's a very good one, because there may well be a parent piece of
There
legislation.
will be parent legislation here. Can't have it without. Secondary legislation needs...
Sorry, the chair's going on. There might be already a piece of parent legislation that they cover reservoirs.
Yeah, would there not be somewhere that they could find to actually
Might be
give them?
if they bring in the floods bill.
The floods bill? Aye, yes, rather
Rather
than
than
the
this.
individual.
Apparently the reservoir, the floods bill, apparently it's be even more titillating than the reservoir bill. If you think this one was difficult, apparently.
Yeah, and just so I'm clear on your point.
subsumed within floods bill, if it were to be delayed.
Yeah, just so I'm clear on your point, Robin, you're asking why can they not bring forward a function that they can actually do an audit of reservoirs through an SR?
Through an SR,
Yeah.
aye.
Yeah.
But if they need parent...
But if they need parent legislation,
There's bound to be somewhere in parent legislation in that whole place.
That could tie that up.
Aye.
Yeah. No, even if it's to do with public safety.
Even if it's just to do the inspection.
Yeah. I think that's something we should explore.
Doesn't mean to say that you can't change the bill if you're still not convinced by their approach and attitude.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say that you can't,
Yeah.
so...
Okay, no, very good point, Robin, thank you. Agenda item number 9 is SR 2014/66, the Common Agriculture Policy Single Payment and Support Schemes Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 123 to 124 and papers from the department pages 125 to 129? Can I advise members that the regulations will change the trading date from the 2nd of April to the 2nd of May 2014 to provide farmers and more landowners more time to consider implications of their business and the changes to entitlements in 2015. The committee was briefed by the department on this issue on the 25th of February and considered the SL1 at the meeting on the 4th of March. At that stage, no issues were identified with the merits of the policy. However, can I also refer members to page 19 of the pack and the letter from DARD regarding impact this could have on its internal administrative procedures. Now this is all, we all know what this is, members. This is one of those issues where we welcomed the delaying of this in order for farmers to have more time with regards to their entitlements. Can I seek questions from members? I'll put the question then of content that the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014/66, the Common Agriculture Policy Single Farm Payment and Support Schemes Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objections to the rule. Agreed? Okay. Agenda item number 10 is SR 2014/86, the Agriculture Student Fees Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 131, 132 and papers from the department at pages 133 to 137? Can I advise members that the regulations will increase tuition fees with the underlying rate of inflation and is designed to keep the fees constant in real terms? Members considered the SL1 on the 11th of March 2014 and were content with the merits of the policy. Can I seek questions from members, if any? If content, I'll put the question that the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014/86, the Agriculture Student Fees Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objections to the rule. Agreed? Agenda item number 11. With so many SRs because of recess. Agenda item number 11 then is SR 92, the Single Common Market Organisation Consequential Amendments Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 139 to 140 and papers from the department at pages 141 to 154? I advise members that the regulations do not introduce any changes to existing policy or have any additional costs or changes. The only change is to alter the number reference to the replacement regulation. Members considered SL1 on the 18th of March, and at that stage were content with the merits of the policy. Can I seek questions from members? If content, I'll put the question that the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014/92. Single Common Market Organisation Consequential Amendments Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objections to the rule. Agreed? Agenda item number 12 then is the SR 2014/54, the Importation of Animals Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2014. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 156 and papers from the department at pages 157 to 160? Can I advise members that the regulation is not subject to any scrutiny by the committee, and nor does it have to be made under the affirmative or negative resolution procedure. This is for information purposes only. The committee considered SL1 on 25th of February. Can I seek comments from members?
In other words, Chairman, just take note.
Just take note. Are members content?
The only issue that has cropped up over the last 2 years, Chairman, is we were certainly on one farm visit where it was mentioned that sometimes imported cattle do bring a new strain of disease to Northern Ireland. And I think it's, as long as the department are completely vigilant and on their guard against any potential of any imported disease, be it from the land border or imported from the continent.
Right, I can write on that.
Yeah, we'll write on that specific issue and then ask them how they guarantee themselves.
In other words, are cattle put into quarantine, or is there a full test carried out when they arrive here? I think all of these things are important.
Okay, members agreed on the question, or sorry, on the letter,
Yeah.
and then seeking clarification, and then are members content to note the rule? Agreed? Okay. Agenda item number 13 then is the possible changes to brucellosis legislation if there are no confirmed outbreaks during the winter testing programme. I think we should all cross our fingers when we're discussing this one. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 162 to 163 and the papers from the department at pages 164 to 218? Can I advise members that the department is proposing to issue a public consultation on the proposals to relax its brucellosis pre-movement testing controls for internal cattle movements within Northern Ireland. The consultation will commence on the 11th of April for 12 weeks, with final responses being sought by the 4th of July. The department can apply for official brucellosis-free status, provided there are no confirmed cases of brucellosis for 5 consecutive years. Can I seek comments from members? Again, it's only giving us a warning that they're going out to consultation.
It's an observation, Chair. We always knew that DARD has had an easy targeted meeting on the PFG and brucellosis. So,
yeah.
after what we heard earlier on in the committee and TB, I think it would be a long way off that level.
Yeah, you're right. And the Access Committee had pushed the Minister and Department as to why they didn't have a programme for government for TB, but yet
this was
easy. Okay, can I say agreement that DARD issues the consultation and returns to the committee with an analysis of the results?
Yeah.
Okay. Agenda item number 14, we're nearly there, members.
Well, no, you've forward work programme, there's a wee bit of work on that.
Agenda item number 14 is the classical scrapey, through memory.
Yes.
Is that right, you may say? Control options. Written briefing DARD. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 220 to 221 and papers from the department at page 222 to 225? Can I advise members that the European Commission has decided to revise certain scrapey controls and introduce new requirements for intra-community trade in live sheep and goats for breeding, fattening and their semen and embryos? The amended regulations will offer greater scope to control and eradicate classical scrapey from a choice of 3 options. The Minister has agreed to consult on the amended classical controls as part of a broader consultation with the TSE regulations Northern Ireland 2010, which will be necessary later this year to take account of these and other changes. Can I see comments from members? If there are no comments, are members content with the proposed consultation being taken forward by the Department? Okay, can I seek agreement that the committee receives an analysis of the responses? Okay. Agenda item number 15 then is a consultation on proposals to revise the Northern Ireland Good Agricultural and Environmental Conditions Standards with effect from the 1st of January 2015, pre-consultation. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 227 to 231 and the papers from the department at pages 232 to 2501. Can I advise members that the department proposes to issue the consultation on the 11th of April and it will last for 7 weeks with final responses sought by the 30th of May. As part of the CAP reform process, the European Commission has decided to amend the framework against which we must develop our good agriculture and environmental conditions requirements. Member States will have the flexibility in setting their own requirements, and this will allow DARD to review the implementation of those requirements to ensure they are fit for purpose as well as to meet the EU obligations. The consultation seeks to shape the development of a revised set of GAEC requirements that is clear to farmers, can be controlled effectively and can achieve the aim of protecting the environment. Can I seek comments from members?
Is this the greening issue or greening condition?
It'll be part of it.
Yeah.
It's
Part of
across compliance.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is actually probably quite an important part of for farmers' everyday working life.
Can I seek agreement from the consultation to issue and ask that the committee be appraised of the responses to the consultation exercise? Okay.
Intent is issued, but there are some very concerning bits of it that I think we'll come back to.
Yeah, we could. Yeah. Okay.
Do you think you might want an oral briefing on the responses and what they intend to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was some of those are.
Given that 30% of the new payment could be associated with greening, it's important.
Yeah.
Responses are sought by the 30th of May, so that'll be after that date. Agenda item number 16 is correspondence. Can I refer members to correspondence received at pages 254 to 270? Are members content to action the correspondence as suggested in the index sheet at page 253? There's only two issues.
Just on the Barossa Task Force, do one of those officers relate primarily to agriculture?
Not entirely to agriculture. One of them covers agriculture and the environment. And another area, we met them in
The economy as
Brussels.
well, yeah.
We met them in Brussels.
Yeah.
But not entirely to agriculture.
They not changed portfolios. They're
We
down.
might, yeah, they
They're
might.
down from 4 to 3. There was 4 out there. There were only 3, so
There
they've
is
all
only,
got
yeah,
changed.
changed.
Okay.
Okay, are members content then? Suggested on the index sheet, page 253. Agenda item number 17 is the forward work programme. Can I refer members to the forward work programme at pages 272 to 276? Members, we are now going to take a few minutes to discuss and finalise our forward work programme for summer recess. The clerk has prepared a draft plan on page 272 of the pack. Can I advise members that there will be no assembly corporate stand at this year's Balmoral show, and therefore there will not be anywhere to do the meet and greet that we did last year. The DARD Agri-Food Industry Breakfast will still be happening, of course, on Thursday the 15th of May. The committee will be invited to that. After that, members will be free to attend the stands and exhibitions as they so wish and see fit. The Balmoral show this year is the week before the elections. Can I also inform members that the clerk has seen the draft Assembly election guidance? It will state that it is seen as inappropriate for the Assembly to be seen to promote any election candidates and would discourage any type of public engagement. I would not therefore be suggesting that the committee hold a stakeholder event or any other type of event as an alternative to the meet and greet. So basically, it'll basically go to your respective stands, I would imagine.
Seems sensible, Chairman.
Yeah. Are members content that this year they will attend the DARD breakfast and then be free to do their own thing?
He's glad.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I refer members then to the forward work programme at pages 269 to 273? Can I ask members to note that there are 10 meetings to summer recess, including the provisional meeting of the week of the elections? Firstly, please note that it will take all 10 meetings to finalise the committee's scrutiny of the Reservoirs Bill. In fact, the clerk thinks we may need at least one additional meeting to do so. Please be prepared for that.
and that must be our priority to summer recess, the scrutiny of the bill. Secondly, please note that 4 briefings have been allowed for the committee to review into rural isolation and farmer welfare issues. That is as previously agreed in September,
Still haven't got to it.
and will be the second priority for the committee. We just haven't been able to get to it, but it was talked about in September. Thirdly, please note that there are at least 4 outstanding and important issues which are sitting at the executive and which are expected to come to the committee before summer recess. You would like to think so.
Can I make that 5 now, because TVR is going that
Okay,
list.
TVR. So they are TVR, CAP Pillar 1, DARD HQ, Going for Growth, and the 14-15 and 15-16 budget. So those 5 issues are sitting there, and whenever they drop down back to the department, then we'll be working on them.
Added into as well as extra meetings.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Probably end up to have to be additional meetings. There is no way to plan for these, as we do not know when they will clear the executive. Additional meetings may be required to deal with them, Joanne. Can I also refer members to the need to allow a session on the outcomes of the SBRI programme for new technologies to deal with the Portly letter? Again, another very important issue. Members should then note that there are 10 committee meetings to summer recess. That means there are 25 to 30 slots. 27 of these slots are already taken, and we've probably just added another one there with regards to the greening. So that leaves 2 slots, and we have 5 major issues from DARD still to slot in, 2 suggested briefings from the Deputy Chair as per bottom of page 276, and a requested briefing from the University of Ulster that we have agreed to. That is 27 briefings plus 8 additional briefings, meaning that we're already looking at 2 additional meetings straight off. There is room to have some discretion around the timing of the Hannon meets and the Northern Ireland Agriculture Consultants briefing. Can I take the opinion of members on deferring these 2 briefings to September? And that is on the Hannon meets and the Northern Ireland Agricultural Consultants briefing.
Chairman, on the Northern Ireland Agricultural Consultants, that was primarily because there was still uncertainty regarding the guidelines of entitlements and guidelines relating to people's application for 2014, which has to be in by the 2nd of May. So the only issue I would say is we may not require them if we get past the 2nd of May.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And the 29th and the 6th are already fully booked. Probably with the reservoir bill, but...
Is it something of a burning...
Well, it was some weeks ago. Whether it's still the same case or not, I'm not too sure, Chairman. But
I'm wondering if there is...
I know they're heavily tied up and advising people on how to fill their farms at the moment.
I'm wondering,
wondering
if it is a burning issue, it's just time pressure to an informal meeting over lunch.
An informal might work, yes, it may work.
An informal meeting over lunch, maybe on a Monday or something of that nature.
Yeah, Michelle was going to say something.
It was really only a suggestion. I'm not really sure just how people are stuck on the whole rural isolation and farmer welfare issues, but would that not be something that we could move and give it more justice in the new term, come September, rather than sort of rushing it in just because you feel obliged, because you have a commitment to it?
The committee committed to it?
Yeah.
Committee committed to it in September. I've no problem with
that.
I know that they wanted to get into flooding in September, but...
Yeah, I do think there's a body of work that we could do, whether it be a review or not. It's up to the minds of the committee on the flooding issue, and we wouldn't want to knock our time. I know Declan was keen. He was one of the drivers of the welfare stuff, so...
It's only because you're tying up quite a bit of time around that, and if there are issues that are coming from the executive which really do need to be slotted in, then maybe that's a project in itself that could be lifted. It
could very easily be lifted and put into September.
Give a bit more flexibility.
September, October, autumn, yeah, we could.
Members' thoughts?
Good idea.
Yeah, no problem with that.
You want to keep those slots free then, or do you want to put other stuff in them now?
Keep them free.
Keep them free, maybe would be.
Okay. We just don't know when this cap
fill them
and all the other stuff's coming. That's the problem. We can't slot it in.
Okay, happy enough then to lift that that issue, that project out, and then put it on the longer finger.
Yeah.
Okay. Are members content to agree that the work programme for the committee meetings is full and anything additional will require an extra meeting? With that in mind, can I refer members to the bottom of page 276 and suggested visits. Again, if members if we can be self-disciplined with regards to be careful what we wish for and what we ask for, I'm not saying that we shouldn't ask for briefings. I'm not saying that people shouldn't come before us, because if there's an emergency we will have them up, but it just means additional meetings. Okay, committee visits then. The Barmore Show is in for May 2014, and Joe Byrne, Deputy Chair, has suggested a visit to Craigan Country Park. They invited us up to see its reservoirs. This could happen in June on a Thursday afternoon. Members would need to be leaving Parliament buildings at 1 p.m. to get there for 3 p.m. Are members content with this suggestion? And how many are committed to attending if we could arrange something?
It's going to be a Thursday afternoon.
Thursday afternoon is when we do our visit, yeah.
Well, I suppose can I ask, is anybody fundamentally opposed to going on a visit? And anybody fundamentally opposed to going to a visit to Craigan Country Park to see a reservoir?
No.
No? Okay. I'll put it in for as soon as we can in June.
Okay. Okay, the clerk has also penciled in that the committee attend the National Ploughing Championships down in the Republic in September. National Ploughing Championships will take place from September 23rd to 25th, 2014.
In County Laois, the same place as they were last year. I can't pronounce it either.
We can. Stradbally. Bally. We can discuss who will attend that event at a later date, as hotels will need to be booked well in advance. So it's something we will have to discuss. So I suppose what we could say today is take it away, have a chat, and then maybe come back maybe next week with,
or 29th, yeah.
or the 29th with people who would be committed to going and people who aren't.
What date is it, Chair?
It's the 23rd to 25th of September.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Chair, I don't understand.
No, I understand. Okay. Okay, members, leave that with you. Come back next week, or even maybe better emailing.
I'll email it.
Email out.
I'll email out and we can discuss it again on the 29th. Okay.
Okay, members, as we have already stated, the committee work programme is full in summer recess, and some additional meetings may be required. Building work on the roof is due to start post-Easter, and due to noise, committee meetings will not be allowed in the buildings on Thursday afternoon. As that is when we would normally hold additional meetings, I would like to take members' minds, to see members' minds about alternative for such meetings. We could, these are the options, Mondays from 12 noon onwards. That might be an issue for Chief Whip, mind you. Tuesday mornings from 10:30 to 12:30. So you basically go out doing part in the morning and then part in the afternoon.
If I need it, I need to know when I can do it.
Or hold the meeting in the Stirling Hotel on a Thursday afternoon. Or have meetings maybe when we're going out to like a Craigan Country Park, and have a meeting there when we're there.
Yeah,
Do you need to get 5 people there then?
Yeah, that's right.
That would be useful to do.
Yeah.
So you can't
that's
do
only
Thursday one stone.
That's only one
off.
You need to make sure.
I think we could leave it in a flexible way for it to be decided
near the time.
near the time.
Well, can I ask, is anybody a preference, or is anybody opposed to any of
Thursday
this?
afternoon is usually good.
Thursday afternoon.
Wednesday.
So other
It's
people
good for
aren't.
me too.
Other people aren't here. You've previously agreed always to have your always to have your additional meetings on a Thursday.
Joe, can you take that meeting on a Wednesday afternoon for me?
No, Joe, you couldn't.
I may not be here.
Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday afternoon, Thomas. What do you
Wednesday afternoon be fine.
Well, that's fine.
There you go.
See, I'm open to the men of the committee. I might just not be here. Joe may have to take over.
All the welcome.
Something that we've never done is an evening committee. You know, could we not even, I know I'm just sort of throwing it out, but even the likes of this evening, you know, where you finish, you could take a half an hour for tea and come back and do an evening meeting, because it's something that's been discussed in and around whenever we've been looking at reviewing committees as well. It might be something just as a tester even for, since we're here anyway on a Tuesday, and if you're given enough notice, then you could be free.
We might need to cap the timing on it.
And it would all depend on the mindset of the members of plenaries on at the same time when the plenary is over. Getting people. the only thing.
Well, they're on here, they're here all day.
It's just another option, and it's something that you could maybe test.
I think to be fair, Chairman, the members give a good commitment to this committee as well as sitting in the plenary, and it is awkward to sort of juggle both, to be honest.
That's particularly around question time is the difficulty. Other than that, these are normally very
What
good.
you do, kind of thought when you go out, the guy found out today, and
You lose the train of thoughts.
those of us have to drive home 75 miles afterwards, and see that also.
75.
The fatigue factor could creep in.
You're already.
I'm 78, remember?
Say it's as long going as it is
Will it be
coming.
an hour of a meeting or an hour and a half, I'd say so? Well, it'll be most of you get your first meeting right up in time.
We look at it because, I mean, we look at it, I mean,
But
we're
we'll be
here.
sensible and flexible.
Yeah. And I mean, there's other committees, so the Justice Committee
people is fairly flexible
and
during the
the
meetings, aren't they?
Health Committee routinely meet to have 7 o'clock at night, so, you know,
Okay.
we'll just keep
Get the
going.
questions asked for you.
Sometimes it is easier just to keep going, even if you just have a half an hour comfort
If you
break.
had a half an hour break, keep going, yeah.
Keeping focus and attention, you know.
Okay.
Or tea and biscuits.
Yeah.
Maybe a more
Fried tea and biscuits.
Okay, can I seek agreement then for the forward work programme as it is then? With all the amendments today?
Agreed.
Okay, agenda item number 18 on our business. Okay, agenda item 19 then is date next meeting, which will be Tuesday, 28th of April, 2014 at 1:30 PM in room 30 Parliament Buildings. Happy Easter, everybody, and enjoy your recess. Declare the meeting adjourned.
Committee room 30.